Well, good evening and hello everybody, and welcome to what is the first of 2 days of action here at the Adelaide Street Circuit. The Adelaide 400 is not only the final round of this year's Enduro Cup for ASR, it is also the final live streamed event of the 2022 season. There is still one race left to go in one of the other championships in ASR, but in terms of what comes to you live and through the channels of Outworld Broadcasting, and of course through all the links we pop up in places like YouTube, Facebook, and a couple of the other sim racing communities, tonight's the qualifying night. So there's 2 qualifying sessions, 2 top 10 shootouts. That sets our grid for a pair of 200-kilometre endurance races tomorrow. So of course, the Enduro Cup, a 2-driver team-based event, and the points looking very, very juicy heading into the final weekend of the 3-round format. I'm Steve DeVries, and opposite me, who's been here for the majority of the season, Supercars and Enduro Cup, is Benjamin Roadie Rhodes. And good evening to you, Roadie. It's, I guess, a bit of a somber note. The year's finally drawing to a conclusion. It's taken a while for us to get here, but it's the last weekend of Supercars racing here in ASR.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to sort of wrap your head around. Good evening to everybody who is watching along. Yeah, it's a hard thing to really sort of wrap your head around, because it feels relatively, not quite a yesterday, but it feels not too long ago that we're starting the season in both Supercars, and obviously most of my effort as a driver this year has been around Enduro Cup, been around Dev Series, so I can quite clearly remember when that kicked off. But yeah, it's only, what has it been, about a 10-month season. It has been the longest season we've had. It's the latest we pushed into the year with some of our major formats of racing. Definitely the latest Enduro we've had this weekend at Adelaide. But crucially, it ties in quite well, because last weekend was the return of the Adelaide, it was the 500 to the Supercars calendar. And Adelaide obviously will be back again next year. And crucially for those guys as well, IRL, it was the last year of holding the championship. It won't be our last year and our last round of holding the championship. We've got Holden again next year, but next year will be our last year for Holden. But even for the guys, it's not our last year, but there's still definitely some emotions flying around some of the Holden drivers, some of the Holden fans after last weekend.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And I know there's been a little bit of talk out there in the paddock around what's happening with ASR in 2023. There's, I guess, still a little bit to be revealed. There's been a few teasers of some of the outstanding work that Nathan Higginson and Brendan Ross have been doing around the Gen 3 cars, but it doesn't look like they'll actually see the light of day next year. The main call around that is to do with the physics, because we want them to be as close to as real life as we possibly can. So it's kind of not fair to put a Super V8 sort of physics on there, the same as what we run in the main game and in Dev Series, and then expect people to behave. We want actually to try and get it a bit closer to reality, which is what you alluded to. The Holden badge will still live on next year for at least another 12 months, while a lot of that fine tuning on that Gen 3 model goes or continues rather, because it's still a lot of work to do. And there'll no doubt be parity adjustment changes and things like that throughout the year that in real life that will probably need to be mimicked here in the sim world. So I guess the important thing there is drivers familiar with the cars, familiar with the physics set, and familiar with I guess their racecraft. So they've got plenty of opportunity to improve and to do things in the form of the Supercars main game, the Dev Series, and whatever becomes of the Enduro Cup as well. There's still a fair bit of thing to work out through that. And what I believe is going to happen after the Enduro Cup is over, there'll be a couple of open nights where we'll probably just have a little bit of an open Discord, have everybody turn up and have a little bit of fun, and they can ask some questions about what we're planning to do for next year, and we'll get some feedback and see if we can take that on board and go from there. So let's have a look at this race weekend format, because this is the interesting part. So heading into the final round of the Enduro Cup. So the Adelaide 400, there's the 2-hour practice session, which is just in the process of concluding, and the drivers are about to get themselves together for a quick catch-up just to make sure everyone knows the rules. Then we've got the first of 2 qualifying sessions for the night. So 20-minute session, unlimited laps, so you can do as many laps as you like. There's a top 10 shootout at the conclusion of qualifying for each session. So the way it's going to work is you've got qualifying, shootout, then we'll have a short pause, and then we'll come back around and do it all again. Another qualifying session, and then another top 10 shootout that goes along with it. So there'll be a little bit of a pause in between those sessions while we set up for them all. That then will set the grids for the pair of 63 lap races tomorrow afternoon. So they're going to be on the air here at 1 o'clock Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. So 200 kilometres each. And you can see there that there's, of course, the driver minimum lap. So we'll worry more about what's on the right-hand side of the equation there tomorrow, because that's when we talk about, who's doing the right thing and who's yet to complete their laps and how the point structure is going to pay out. We focus on what's in the top left for today, which is the qualifying and shootout sessions. Now, importantly, Rhodey, there is no caveat on the drivers that can partake in this qualifying. So drivers can opt to split the qualifying sessions one way or the other. So you can have one driver do one driver do the other qualifying session, or you can have one driver do both of them. But the important thing here is that if you do qualifying and you make it to the shootout, you can't switch drivers. That driver has to do the shootout, no choice. So it's not like previous things with, say, the Phillip Island qualifying and Bathurst qualifying, where you were locked into one driver doing the lot of qualifying because it was only the one session. It's 2 sessions tonight. It's a little bit different.
Yeah, and I know there's some drivers that are planning, some teams, sorry, that are planning to switch drivers for the 2 sessions. I know Tomo and Will for 5 Minutes Racing have been discussing it. And I believe Steve Burko and Dane's fill-in driver, Pete Savage, and we'll get to that later, are also thinking about switching, sharing the sessions. That's what I was looking for. Mm-hmm. But there are also drivers in the field who are going to stick one or the other. I know, for example, he's not currently in the server, but he should be in there soon. I'll get on his case because he's my driver. But John McDonald will be, assuming he does make it, he will be qualifying in both sessions, and I'd like him to be in the top 10, but I doubt it. But if he makes it to the top 10, he'll be doing top 10 shootout both times, because Brad's, well, it's not news. He's an overseas driver. Mm-hmm. He's had a pretty long work week, and just getting up at 4 a.m. to do qualifying just wasn't on the cards for him. So he'll be in to race tomorrow. But as with, I think even with Bathurst for us, I think John qualified that one as well. So at the same time, John will be qualifying. And there are a couple of drivers in the field. I'm trying to remember who it is. I think Berkey is planning on qualifying. At least Hans is around, but I know Hans was doing a track day at Phillip Island today, and I'm not sure when he left to come back. So he might have just put Berkey in just as a safe bet, just if the traffic was bad or if he left the track late. There's probably a few other drivers in that same situation where they're the only driver present. I know Rossi is actually one example where I believe Lewis Wedding is otherwise occupied tonight, so Rossi will be qualifying that car as well.
Yeah, and a couple of others I'm aware of as well. So Steve Warwick in the car for the Black Shores RSM team. He'll be qualifying for both of them tonight. And the other one's Cam Rutledge in the CRE and Anson car with Daniel Cox, who's left a couple of messages in the live chat. He's unfortunately out tonight, and he will be back in time for the race tomorrow. So a few drivers splitting duties, and some drivers that are relying on just the one driver to do both the sessions. But actually, that's an interesting point. We talk about drivers that are doing one session or both sessions. Let's actually have a look at the team standings, because coming into tonight, of course, there's no points on the table for tonight's qualifying sessions, but have a look at these standings here, Rhodey, because this is quite close. So if it is the case when you've got Lachlan Burke and the other man in the team has been there, if Brendan Ross matched, 9 points separating them at the top of the Enduro Cup point standings. That's going to be crucial as to, if they can come out on top and have a better qualifying position for tomorrow, keeps them out of trouble. Then you've got the C7 Motorsport guys who have got a substitute this week, and then you've got Cam Rutledge on qualifying duties for the fourth placed car there, separated by just 2 points in the standings as well. So crucially, there's a lot riding on qualifying for some of these drivers tonight.
Yeah, so and that's the thing, there's a lot of drivers that are now playing into the championship that weren't going to be doing that coming into this round, coming out of Bathurst, or not so much coming out of Bathurst, but, people from the first round had an idea in mind where they'd probably end up in the championship. And then Bathurst happened, and we had a lot of key runners not make it into the race and score 0 points as a result, which completely changed the order. I'm trying to remember a picture where they are now. They are down in 8th. but 5 Minutes Racing was pretty comfortably 5 Minutes Racing and Kiwi Sim Sports Beyond Borders, the other team. They were both, the coming out of Adelaide, the surefire 1-2, because they'd shared seconds and first, and by virtue of 5 Minutes Racing, I think it was by virtue of Kiwi Sim Sports picking up the win in the feature race on the Sunday, they managed to pull ahead. But they both picked up DNFs as a result of how Bathurst played out. So KSS Beyond Borders is now 5th. That'll be Nathan Higginson. And at the moment, Kurt Stenberg is in that car tonight. Tim Redmond is actually available. It wasn't initially scheduled, but by virtue of Kurt being first in the queue, Kurt's jumping in that car. But if Kurt becomes unavailable, Timmy back in the car. It's a bit of a hot seat situation with that car. And as I mentioned, the 5 Minutes Racing car of Will Devson Tomo, they're currently down in 8th. They're actually just ahead of the car that Kurt was last in, which was the guest car at Bathurst with Dane Warren. Obviously, that car will fall down the order because it's only scored points from the one race. But it's a very fluid top 10 just based on the last 2 rounds. And as I was saying earlier, all we need is another DNF, and I pray for no DNFs on anyone because nobody enjoys those. But from a championship order point of view, we could be in a situation where the top 2 aren't the top 2 coming out of this weekend's worth of racing. So I don't think we can really comfortably lock anyone into any positions just yet.
No, there's still a lot to play out for, and I think from 5th right on back to to 8th, possibly even the guys that are in 10th there as well with the Team 05A car. Not taking any further part, that was a once-off. There's still a lot that can play out there. And I mean, if you talk about Bathurst, right, there was some really interesting stats and storylines coming out of Bathurst. So going into the event, the team that led the most amount of laps was, in fact, Kiwi Sim Sports Beyond Borders. They'd chalked up 61 laps, led at Phillip Island. And then Stenberg and Warren came in and led 66 of the 81 at Bathurst, and then the Kiwi Sim Sports Beyond Borders car didn't get a look in on the lead of the race at all. So that's why the most laps led has actually swung on that balance there on the left-hand side. And then the other really odd positional thing that I can scarcely believe this, Rody. I went back and did the numbers. Have a look who's gained the most positions based on where they qualified to where they finished, and it's a bit of an odd pairing. It was coming into the series, but Justin Cecil and Taipan in the number 21 CRE Locky Lock Motorsports Mustang, they've gained 13 across the sprint race at Phillip Island, the main feature race at Phillip Island, and the Bathurst 500. And they've finished every race, they've kept out of trouble, and they're 7th in the point standings and right in the thick of that fight in the back half of the top 10.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like they've got there just because they've rocked up every round and they've managed to keep out of trouble. And I was talking with Taipan earlier, and I say this for Taipan's benefit. Maybe the reason they've had a better run is because I'm not on track. Because most notably in the back half of Dev Series, I found myself a habit of running into Taipan. I'll say this again, it's not something I chose to do, it's something I'm going to work on for next year. But it's a point of conversation between the two of us. But maybe that's the benefit for them. I'm not out there to ruin their race. But no, they've kept out of trouble for all the points paying situations. And even to be fair, they've probably done pretty well in qualifying sessions as well. But they kept out of trouble in all the points paying situations so far. And they're probably in a good position where, like, they get out there and race. They're not right down the back where they're at risk of maybe aggressive lapping, which can get into your head and can throw you off your game, and especially around a track like Adelaide. And obviously, we'll talk about Adelaide later at the track itself. Mm-hmm. But you really don't, probably similar to Bathurst, but different in a way. There really isn't chance for you to have a slight brain fade or to lose your attention span. But they're not so far back that is necessarily a risk, and they're not so far up the front like the AAR car, like the has-beens, which are currently 1 and 2, like the KSS car, like the 5 Minutes car, like both AAR cars, to be fair, where things turn into a sprint race and things get a little bit feisty, a little bit messy. And we saw this at Adelaide IRL on the weekend, that drivers getting tipped off here and there in what is still relatively long distance racing. I think technically they're running similar or slightly longer distances than we're running for our Enduro, so it's similar sort of mindscape, similar sort of car usage. But yeah, they're in a middle ground where they're still fun people to race, but it's a bit calmer. They're sort of the calm in the eye of the storm where they've been running so far. So it's that, and just running every session and keeping out of trouble and just doing their best is put them up there. So, yeah, a lot of the guys that are around at the moment are probably a little bit faster than them, but all they need to do is just keep plugging away and finishing and getting results, and they'll keep moving up.
That's right, absolutely. And speaking of moving up, it's actually time for qualifying. We've got cars rolling down the lane. 20 minutes is on the clock, and here we go for the first of the 2 sessions tonight. There is that number 21 machine being tailed by the sister machine, the 237, with Lockie Lock at the wheel, and they all head out of the lane for quali. So important. It is a street circuit, 3.219 kilometres, 14 turns. We'll have a little bit of a look at things as they sit a bit later on in the evening's proceedings. But we are just keeping an eye on who is yet to leave the lane. There's still 3 cars there with Turmo, Brendan Ross and Steve Warwick. Now, we have got only 13 runners for tonight. Hopefully we'll pick up a couple more throughout the course of the weekend. A few guys maybe missing qualifying tonight. Happy just to start down the back tomorrow. I guess that's unfortunate, with the timing of things being close to Christmas and work parties and all sorts of things going on. And there was a late change in schedule about sort of mid-year because of some issues with where the Enduro Cup fell and a few other reasons. So it was pushed back to later in the year. So unfortunately we are seeing the detrimental effect of that, and hopefully we'll pick up maybe another 1 or 2 cars tomorrow as we get laps underway with Lockie Burke.
Yeah, so Berkey is the head of the queue in the 111 AAR Mustang. And yeah, we're starting to get a look at how this Adelaide track plays out. It's not terribly unfamiliar to anyone who's been watching the last few years. The track hasn't changed massively. We have made a few tweaks to it. You'll notice as we come out of the staircase section, there's a couple of additional bits of wall and tyre that simulate what the layout currently sits like in real life. But yeah, pretty clean run for Berkey so far. Nearly 23 flat through the first sector. Here's the additional bit. I know some people like to use the runoff on the left there. That's now protected by a wall, so that really defines that you stick to the racing surface. And Berkey's now in his run down to turn 8.
Yeah, here he goes through the fast high-speed part of the thing. He's got to have a little confidence lift going in and then pick the throttle up at precisely the right moment. And he did that pretty well, left a bit of margin for error on the outside, on his left, going through turn 8. So didn't quite grab the fence. You don't want to give that fence too hard of a nudge. And now into turn 11. Oh, we're getting very close to the wall there. And just gave it, I think, just an ever so slight rub on the exit there. That won't hurt his pace too much. So at the moment, Rosella purple first sector, Lockie Burke purple second sector at the moment as it sits, but of course the times are continuing to tick in, so there will be a constant evolution here. 19.8 to start proceedings, so 19.8 for the 111 machine, and the sister machine, we're going to try and see if we pick that up in just a few moments' time. Here's Turmo, who's on qualifying duties tonight. Getting some word through, it looks like Turmo's going to do both sessions, so that's some new information coming through that we didn't have at the start of the night. Oh, very close to the wall there as well.
Yeah, a little bit of rub of the wall. Yeah, from what I understand, coming into the night, there was plans at one point for the 5 Minutes Racing guys to share, but I'm going to guess Turmo's probably cracked into some pace a little better than Will's been able to, and obviously you want to set yourself up well in qualifying if you've got aspirations to go high in the race settings. So it makes sense if Turmo's the one with the pace on board tonight, that Turmo is the one who runs both qualifying sessions. Very,
very small lock-up at the beginning at turn 13, and then a bigger lock-up at turn 14 went well wide of the apex, so that'll cost him probably a good half a second or so by the time you get back on the throttle and drive it to the line. 20.9, yeah, definitely a lot of time to find there and improve. We pick up the sister of the AAR cars coming through turn 8, chasing Matt Cecil pretty hard actually, and Rosella down the inside of the number 23 machine pretty quickly. They're both entitled to some space there because they are both on flying laps at the moment, so there's no reason why one has to give way to the other. Could have quite happily pressed on, but Cecil just being a bit sensible there, I guess, not really wanting to impede the run of much faster car. Both of them using quite a heavy amount of curb on the inside at 13. There's some different schools of thought there that we'll have a bit of a talk about across the next couple of hours, I guess, between now and tomorrow's afternoon's races, as Rosella puts in the fastest time we've seen throughout all the practice sessions so far this week with a 1 minute 18.5.
Yeah, an interesting point for the top of the table will be, as always, on who's sort of given their time away in the practice session, even the official practice session, bleeding into this qualifying session, and who's still holding on to something. you know, Luke's has some good pace, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was holding a little bit of it close to his chest in the practice session. The fastest car in the practice session was actually Noah Tara towards the end of the session, which makes sense. Noah's quite a quick driver. He hasn't had a chance to show it, but we've seen a couple of appearances from him this year in Dev Series where he's been able to get the car under him, and he's been able to put some quite strong pace on. Has comfortably won a number of the races in Dev Series. And you know, there's talk next year that he might be on his way up to supercars. But for the enduros, and especially for Adelaide, this is his home track. Him and his father Greg are both based in Adelaide, and I'm not sure if we're going to see Greg in qualifying tonight. Greg is still a pretty capable driver, but he maybe doesn't quite have the raw pace of Noah. So I wouldn't be surprised if Noah's going to qualify the car both sessions. But yeah, I'm curious to see how much further up and maybe how much further Noah was holding on when he paced, whether what we're already seeing from Noah is the best we're going to see. But I do expect to see the number 26 Flinders car do quite well tonight.
Yeah, well, here he is actually. We've been watching on screen for the last few minutes. He's on an out lap at the moment, just getting ready to start his first flying lap. I'm with you. I expect Noah to do both qualifying sessions tonight and the shootouts if he makes it. And the only reason I say that is because from the GT3 series that we've been running, we know that Greg sometimes has to disappear to pick up one of his other sons and doesn't usually make the end of the races. So I think probably the smart money tonight on Tara of the Noah variety to complete qualifying and put the car in a good position for tomorrow's pair of races with the South Australian natives, along with Luke Rosella, looking to have a good showing here this weekend. So through turns 4 and 5, this is through the staircase section as it's affectionately known. This is where the new walls were added, the one there, the Repco one on the driver's left on the exit of 6, and then the other one here, which has actually been in Adelaide for quite some time, but hasn't actually been modelled up until this point. In the old days, it actually used to go over that curb. A lot of drivers used to use that curb, basically cross right over it, try and maximise their speed on the exit. You can't do that anymore. And it probably stops the lap times sort of getting to what they had been all those years ago on the old layout. The lap times, coincidentally, the lap records are well into the low 17s. So you'll see when we bring up the track graphic a little while from now, there are 17.0 and I think a 17.3 are the qualifying and lap records, but those of course are on the soft tyres, so we're not going to get anywhere near those tonight, given we're on the hard tyre. And of course the fact that we've now got the extra wall that's on the exit of turn number 7 there as well, as Noah goes up to P2, it's probably going to mean that a couple of tenths of a second at least are knocked off the any potential track records, even if we were using the soft tyres.
Yeah, it probably trims a little bit off the time. It depends on where drivers are attaining pace. It could be more of a psychological thing rather than just a physical effect, where you've got less runoff on the outside, so you feel less confident pushing up to what used to be the centre line of the curb, but is now the wall. I know some drivers do like to go out there. I'm not sure if necessarily you find pace out there. It might just be an easier drive, or just you can save some energy for other parts of the track. But I believe the quicker drivers probably still do run within sort of the tram tracks, being the wall on the right-hand side and the curb on the left-hand side, and aren't so affected by the wall. From a physical sense, it's more just psychological effect of there's a big bit of concrete that I don't want to touch, or my car's going to either be spun or I'm going to rip a wheel off or something like that.
Absolutely. So here's Taipan, he's 11th at the moment, just on the fringes of the top 10. And his time at the moment is looking good to maybe just vault him ahead of Mark Davey if he can just keep it together. Very tidy through the last sector here. And 2 green sectors for Taipan, 23.4 and 33.3. And driving to the line now, looking forward. He goes, actually, no, he doesn't. He falls just a fraction short at a 22.0. So needs to find some more time here to get himself into the 10. The other man I was just looking at here, Rody, who's got an awful amount of work to do is the has-been racing machine of Brendan Ross. He's plumb last at the moment. He's been stung for a track violation at least once from when I've been following. He's got a yellow flag now for a car that just went down the escape road at turn 6, and that car gets out of the way pretty quickly, gives the wall on the exit of 6 there a nice little rub, and he's in a bit of bother here. It's only still 10 minutes to go, so importantly, he's got time on his side. But the more the time ticks away, the more anxious you become, especially if you push the envelope a little bit too far. You get another track violation, then you start to hit the panic button a little bit.
Yeah, I know I had documented, or pretty close to documented, knowledge of how much practice the has-beens guys were putting in for Bathurst. They pretty early got into a setup that they reckon they could. I think they could do sixes with. I can't quite remember, but it was for them. It was pretty good. It was stonking pace.
Oh, he got out of control there. He got the grass on the approach through 13. He just took a little bit too much curb on the inside there, and then the car was upset. And then when he went to hit the brakes, the left-hand side tyres were on the grass, and he went well wide of the mark at turn 14. And he's crossed the line. Importantly, he's put himself into the 10. He's gone up to 7th place. His time there, 1.3 seconds adrift of the current pole time, as Live Race is actually taking a little bit of time to actually update itself tonight. There it goes. 1 minute 19.9. He would have lost at least, Rody, at least 0.5 of a second to 0.6 of a second going through the hairpin after the little incident that we just saw.
Yeah, where I was going with all that was that I know he's been doing some practice this week. We've been in sitting in a chat with a couple of us getting some work done, obviously setting up stuff for the end of this year and for next year. And every night Rossi has found himself an opportunity to go and sneak away and jump into the practice server and do some laps. But the other thing as well is he did jokingly say in the chat, and I think he might be half serious, although that said I don't think it's an issue now. He's jokingly said he's hoping not to match his last 3 Adelaide qualifying appearances by being at the back of the grid for the first race. I remember 2020 was a notable example where of the 3 PBF cars, I was the fastest in qualifying because both Foley and Rossi couldn't get a lap in. No, he's pretty good now. Obviously, he's cleaned up that run a little better out of the last corner, so he probably gained a couple more tenths here, like you mentioned, and that does drop him now into 5th.
Yeah, so he was actually nearly 2 tenths up at Sector 1. He actually had a poor run through turn 9, and he ended up being about 2.5 tenths down, and he's actually managed to find a bit more time in the 3rd sector because he got the hairpin right that time. So importantly, I think that sees him safe. So he's moved up the order. He's now on a 19.3, just fractionally behind Lockie Burke, who's also on a 19.3. I'm just looking at the times here as well, Rody. You know how we said they were separated by 9 points coming into the weekend, the top 2 teams?
Yeah.
They're separated by 9 one-thousandths of a second right now.
Yeah. That said, they are both heading out again. Berkey is currently finishing a lap, and Rossi is leaving the pit lane to start another one. And look, given the format for Adelaide and just the length of time you got to qualify, and I think a lot of drivers are probably doing relatively short, sharp stints. Berkey's grouped by 2 tenths, so he hasn't really changed his position. He's just given himself a bit more padding over Rossi. He's actually now a little closer to Kurt Stenberg, but I expect Kurt Stenberg to probably improve a little bit as well. Yeah,
well, Kurt Stenberg actually just improved about 0.2 of a second across the line, goes up into P2. He's on an 18.803 at the moment, so he's still got 3.5 tenths to go to match Luke Rosell up. And I guess the important bit there for Stenny is he'll put the car in a good spot for Higginson to run with throughout the course of the race as well. So there won't be any issues with a good pilot. And I guess we can say as well, we're still yet to finalise the results with regards to the Supercars Championship for this year, but I don't think there will be any doubting that the champion-elect for 2022 will be officially recognised as the champion on the other side of this weekend.
Absolutely, yeah. It's just been with all the stuff that's been going on the last little weeks. It's one of the things where it has to be done, but there's no sort of timeline really to tick it off outside of just I suppose it's not quite the right way, but a politeness of just getting all that stuff wrapped up. So that'll be done in the next week or two before we officially end off 2022. But yeah, Kurt's done a pretty good job this year. And I don't think there's anything much coming out of anything that happened in the last round that would see him losing that. And yeah, it makes sense because he's had pretty good pace, obviously, in supercars, and we've seen it we saw it at Bathurst, and we're seeing it pretty well now as well at Adelaide. At this point, he's currently almost 3 tenths ahead of Noah Tara, and I'm not sure how much extra Noah can buy into that.
No, I don't think. I think Noah's actually quite safe at the moment as well. So with only 5 3/4 minutes remaining in the session, I think the top 3 are quite comfortable where they currently sit. So focus a bit further down the order. Actually, it's been very good to welcome back this man who's filling in for Dane Liccardo. Now, circumstances about why he's in as a substitute this weekend are a little bit sketchy, and I think there's probably a request that we probably don't talk too much about it because some of it's deeply personal. But we've only got limited information coming through. But we haven't seen Pete Savage since the end of the 2021 ASR Supercars Championship. So it's been a massive 12 months of where the hell have you been for Pete Savage, and into the fold. And at the moment, P6, 19.8. And I guess if you're under 1 minute 20 at Adelaide, you're doing pretty well. So that's a good sign. And he's improving lap on lap on lap right now, Roddy. Little 10th here, or, you know, a couple of hundredths there at the moment. So he's just sort of got to work his way and feel his way back into it. That's the part of the circuit right there, turn 7, that he will have snuck up on him, I think, from the last time he competed here.
Absolutely, no. And it's been a while for Pete. It's been a while since his last at Adelaide, at least within ASR, because it was, I think, the opening round of the season in 2020. So it's been almost 24 months since he's been around Adelaide in a supercar. Obviously, the supercar has changed incrementally over that time. Obviously, Adelaide has changed. But crucially for him, he sort of finished off his last year. He was...
Oh, he just got the wall. Sorry, he just got the wall. Yeah, he just snagged the wall at 11 there, and I think he's probably, he's about to bail out of it. So that's the end of his qualifying. He's got another run left in him. There's a few drivers.
Might just get out too.
Yeah,
but yeah, but what I was saying is he finished off the year quite strongly. I think he got to the point in 2020 where sort of he ticked all the boxes he sort of wanted to tick, and all the boxes that were sort of in his range. So he didn't really have anything more to prove, and also he's been out getting life busy with some other stuff as well. But you know, even if it's just for the weekend, it's good to see Pete back. And yeah, you know, he's jumping in. Dane's got a few things on this weekend. The crucial thing for Dane, I suppose, as to why it's probably the best he's not in the car this weekend, is he is turning 18 tomorrow, and he is planning on getting suitably liquored up as a result. Yeah. So it was always pretty questionable if he was going to race tomorrow. But that's definitely one of the easy to explain reasons as to why Pete's in the car. But crucially, it gives us a chance to see Pete, and it gives Pete some more airtime.
That's exactly right. I mean, let's just call it like it is, Rady. He's looking forward to getting suitably pissed.
Yes.
He is. That's what the answer is. But I would have actually thought he could have celebrated. Like at the moment, they're in position. They're looking like they're going to be right in the contest for a third place finish. I would have actually loved to have seen Dane in the car and see the pair of him and Steve Burko finish third, and then Dane do a shoey as part of his 18th birthday celebrations. That's what I was looking forward to seeing. But sadly, it doesn't look like we're going to see that.
That would have been good, but to be fair, it depends on how family dynamics work. I know there's some family situations where you know, you're lucky to get a birthday dinner, and some families will make the entire day a birthday. And you know, especially for an 18th, he probably have some of his mates over through the day, and he might be half plastered before the race even starts. And there are some drivers that do drive better. I know some drivers that drive better with a little bit in the tank, but it's not a blanket rule that you drive quicker with alcohol in the system. No. And I'll say this officially: I don't encourage driving alcohol in the system in any form.
All right, well, he's actually just come back into the live chat and said if he does get third, that he is going to do a shoey. Now, I'm going to grab my mobile phone and I'm going to photograph that live chat right now, because that's the evidence that is proof that he said that he was going to do it. So there you go. I've now photographed that, Dane. You can't retract that message. I do have the proof. So that's now on you. If Burko and Pete do manage to complete the race and your team is third overall, at the end of the Enduro Cup, you're doing a shoey.
Yeah, we will hold you to that, Dane.
We will hold you to that.
I'm not sure when that'll fall in, but we'll have an opportunity in some public format, whether it's maybe, I don't think it'll be as late as, you know, round 1 of Supercars next year, but we will make sure that it happens on broadcast.
No, it's before Christmas, right? End of story. It's before Christmas. He's got to do it. You know what? We might have to get him to do it at one of the open nights coming up, I think, as well. We'll just have to
might be a good opportunity, yeah.
Just get it done, right? Simple fact. The G in there's at work at the moment. There's I guess the company values for me. They call it the Edge, and there's a whole bunch of things in there. And then the G for the Edge stands for get it done. So yeah, for Dane, shoey, mate, get it done. That's all we're going to do. We're going to hold you to it. All right, 1 minute to go in qualifying here. So the top half a dozen spots at this stage are pretty much safe. Savage and Termo can change hands a little bit, but they're still inside the top 10. The important ones we're looking at right now: Steve Warwick 9th. Cam Rutledge 10th, Mark Davey 11th. So Cam needs to find some time to insulate himself from Mark Davey behind. The 0.3 of a second margin, 10th to 11th, is the key one at the moment. Now, Cam got a track violation this time around, according to what our live timing is saying. He's just about to come through Sector 2 at the moment, and yes, we haven't got a Sector 1 time for the moment. So he's got to get to the line here, and he's got 20 seconds to do it. I'm not 100%. He's not going to make it.
No,
just the math right now. He will not make it.
The other one I'm worried about, actually, just up the road on him is Sticks. Oh, sorry, Mark Davey.
He will
He's
get
at the
there.
hairpin with 10 seconds left. He might just get there, but I'm not sure what sort of pace he's got under him and how the tyres are.
He'll get there with about 3 seconds to spare.
He will be the last car to start a lap.
Yep, he is. There he goes. And actually, Pete Savage, I think, maybe just snuck one in as well. So he was right on the cusp. Cam Rutledge is done.
Yes, he has.
Cam Rutledge is done. So that's important for him. He cannot move any further up the order, but he can lose position. So it's all down to Sticks right now. In the 38 racing, number 38. Can he get into the top 10 shootout for the first of them tonight? Not with that number at Sector 1, he won't. He's 3/10 away, not from his PB, but he's now in a fence.
No.
That's it.
There it goes.
So there it goes. So over and out for Mark Davey. The pressure was on and he couldn't make it happen. So that means that Steve Warwick, who's coming into the lane now, is safe. And then it's all about a few drivers just down the order for a little bit of pride here. Taipan in the number 21 LLM Mustang has got it locked up on the inside. They're coming into turn number 9. And he's half a second away from his PB, so there won't be any improvement on this one for him. And then Matt Cecil, I think, is just a little bit further up the road at the last corner and driving to the line. And what's Matt's actually goes? Actually improves. He does a 121.7. So Matt Cecil, I think he can be mighty proud of that, considering that car was in the 22s and 23s most of the practice sessions this week. I think they can be pretty proud they've cracked a 21 in quali.
Yeah, they've managed to break it down, and that's crucial. Like it's a weird thing. And Sticks, sorry, I keep saying Sticks, but I can say Sticks. That's his online handle. But Mark's had a bit of surprise early when he found out that he was the benchmark for the guys at the back of the field, considering that he's only his second time in a supercars, or second time in enduro, and you know, one sort of I wouldn't not kind of once bitten twice shy situation, but definitely after the way Bathurst panned out for him. He sort of went back to the drawing board. Obviously, he's had a bit sort of place on his shoulders with Bailey unable to make it tonight. Bailey will be racing tomorrow, but it is down to Sticks to do the qualifying tonight. And you know, it was only, you know, he's still a couple of tenths off of getting into the top 10, but that's still a pretty good result. And you know, he's mentioned in the live chat that he reckons he's got the pace. So we're going to see how we go for quality too, because Cam will be spending the next 10-15 minutes, probably up to 20 minutes, you know, being first one out in the shootout and then waiting for the rest of the shootout to happen, versus Sticks that if he really wanted to could go and jump into a test day and bang out another 20 laps worth of quali practice to try and break into the top 10 in the second quali session.
Yeah, you're not wrong. So as we settled in now for a very short turnaround time, we're just waiting for Matt Cecil to get back to the garage, which he has just done. And we've got, we'll have a very short interlude here just while we change a few things around and get ready for the shootout. So the way they're going to line up in the shootout coming up in a few moments' time. If I can get my mobile phone together again and we can have a look, because I'll need to relay this into the chat to all the drivers. So the first man up you'll see will be Cam Rutledge, then Steve Warwick, Lockie Lock, Termo, Pete Savage, then Lockie Burke, Noah Turra, Kurt Stenberg. Brendan Ross, what a surprise that was. He jumped up there in a bit of a fast rate of knots. He actually was second quickest out of all of that at the end of the day. Only 2.22 of a second behind Luke Rosella. So, and Rosella, of course, will be last. So where'd that pace from Rossi come from? He found something.
Yeah, and look, as I said, hang on.
Whoops.
Sorry about that. Yeah, that's. I should have mentioned at the start of the broadcast. I am the other side of COVID, but I'm still dealing with a cough, so had to go for the inline mute button there. But no, he's been putting in practice most of the week. I know that part of the reason why he's qualifying is because of Bale. Part of the reason is because he's had the chance to put in practice this week. Lewis at the back end of this week has had some other stuff crop up, which is also why he's not here tonight. But no, you know, he jokingly said, you know, he doesn't want to be back in the top 10, but at the same time, you know, you're right. They're fighting for a team championship. They're still a little touchy, I suppose, about that they had a team championship in supercars, and then by no real fault of their own, it got taken away from them. So they're very much on the surface, very casual about everything, but I think they are still very much trying to aggressively lock in and gun for the teams and essentially the team title and essentially the title for Enduro Cup.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. What stands out for you in that session, Roddy? I know we're missing quite a few key runners in that one, but I mean, it was a pretty clean session. There wasn't really anything wrong. No one really did anything, you know, untoward or that. I think the real casualty, I think, and he's alluded to it in the chat here, Sticks, he said he couldn't buy a clean lap once he dropped down into P11, so it felt like, I guess, he was chasing his tail a little bit.
Yeah, so the interesting point for all that, just looking at all of it, it's, in terms of pace, Rosell been at the top, not a surprise. Yeah, Rossi eventually buying up into second. He's cracked into some good pace there. It'd be interesting to see whether he can back that up over the one lap, and again, how that one lap plays into people. Some guys at the back will push a little bit harder because worst they can do is 10. Some guys at the front towards the front might be a little bit more conservative because they have a good spot. They don't want to throw it away. I expect someone like Luke is probably going to throw 10-10s at it regardless. But yeah, Rossi up in second. Noah, he's had good pace. I did expect him to fall back a little bit, but he is still ahead of the AAR cars. Ahead of the second AAR car, which I didn't necessarily expect, but we've seen it. Noah's got a lot of pace. It's just he hasn't had a chance to show it, so he comes across as a bit of an underdog, but that's not necessarily the case. Noah up in fourth, Lockie fifth, Pete up to sixth. Again, pretty good on not quite debut, but pretty good on return to be back up to sixth. And he and Steve have both had decent pace. They reckon they'll be back towards the back in the race sessions, but honestly, if their qualifying is reflective of their race pace, I don't think that's going to be an issue for them. I suppose, the rest is sort of played out sort of how I saw it coming. I suppose the slight surprise is Sticks up to 11th, and to be fair, Sticks reckoned he could get up to 10th. That's sort of how things are played out. And as I said, he's got a chance to try this again in the second session. But now we move on to the top 10 shootout.
We do. So we've now cycled back around to the top 10 shootout. Now we will, preface this by saying as well, once the top 10 shootout is complete, we will have an opportunity to just take a short break while we get a few things in order, a few matters of housekeeping, and then we'll be gives the drivers about 5 minutes to sort themselves out, and then jump back in for the second set of qualifying. So it's a little bit of a unique format from what we've had across most of the year, where we've had qualifying, then a race, or qualifying shootout, then a race. This is the only series, I think, that we actually run, Rody. I can't remember another one where we've done these outside of Enduro Cup, where we have 2 sets of qualifying and 2 sets of shootouts on the same night. It's a little bit of a unique format that we've only had whenever we've done the 400 kilometre races, whether they've been here at Adelaide, whether they've been at actually, what was the last one? The Gold Coast was the last one that we had, and there's plenty. They're the only times that we've actually done the Enduro Cup in the last 2 years, and it's had that sort of format. So it's definitely a unique thing here. And Daniel Cox in the live chat is watching wherever he happens to be. I'm wondering if he's whoever he's with at the moment. I think it might be his wife. Whether she realises what he's doing at the moment, watching his teammate Cam Rutledge going around at the moment. But importantly for Coxie, he said exactly what he needs to do. He said, it ain't over yet, right? Rutledge just made the shootout, but, you can only go up from here. This is the important thing, Rody. You can only improve your position in the shootout if you're the first man out. If someone behind you bins it, then you've gained a spot. Not a problem there at all. If you throw it in the fence, well, you're starting where you qualified in 10th place. So, nothing to lose and everything to gain here for the 915 ZB Commodore.
Yeah, and the only quirk we're going to see around Adelaide over most other tracks, I mean, to be fair, Gold Coast is similar in format, but there is only really one major place you can get a track kind of ruin your lap around here, and it's the first corner complex. So we'll see that we might see that fairly early in some sort of drivers' approaches and especially how they take the turn one. We'll see this probably from Cam to begin with. I wouldn't be surprised if he's taking more of a racing line through rather than like a quali line through the first chicane, just to ensure he gets a clean lap away, but he is away now on his time lap.
Alright, so using maximum track on the outside of turn 1 to try and open up the corner as much as possible. A little bit of a squirm as he launches over the curbs through 1, 2 and 3 safely, pulling the car up straight for turn 4. Staircase section leaves a little bit on the inside at turn 4 there, right out to the wall, gets a little bit doesn't get quite close enough to the apex at 5. He's got to clip the inside here at 6. There you go. He got the inside, the car rose up and then just dropped down very quickly. Hug the wall on the left side at 7 and in you go. Doesn't use all the road at 7. importantly. Gets a nice straight drive off though, so conservative approach so far for Rutledge. How is he through turn 8? Gets a little bit of curb right up to the fence, gives it a little rub on the way through as well for good measure, and now pulls it up in the hardest of the braking zones. Angles it towards the hairpin, so and stays off the outside curb. So different approach compared to a lot of other drivers at the moment. As the back end gets away from him there on the turn in for turn 11 as well. He was very close to losing the car there as well. So this is the last complex here. Very, very committed, and you've got to be absolutely precise with your brake application and your turn in application. Car rotates nicely through the hairpin. So important for Rutledge. He's safely through the last hairpin and gets to the line. 21.3 for Cam Rutledge. So definitely slower than the benchmark that got him in, but we kind of expect that in the shootout. And, well, I think he was a little bit nervous in that one.
Yeah, that was still a pretty good run, though. And look, he's got a time lap on the board, which some guys ahead of him might push a little too hard. First sector, definitely an easy way to do it and knock themselves off of the timing tree. But the next car to now look at is Steve Warwick.
So Steve Warwick in the number 50 RSM Black Shores Commodore. He's sharing with Cuz Berenhuele, and it's actually going to be great to see Cuz back after the issues that he had that unfortunately kept him out of the Bathurst 500. I've been told he's actually recovered quite well, which is great to hear and very, very pleasing to see. So we'll see him in car number 50. I've got a funny feeling, this must be almost a maiden top 10 shootout appearance for Steve Warwick. I'm going to have to go back through the record books and check this.
I think so, possibly. It might otherwise bleed back maybe to Gold Coast last year. But yeah, if it isn't the first, it's definitely been a while. But it's good to see Steve up there now. That was a quite actually aggressive run, and I have a feeling that was too much in the first sector.
Possibly, yeah. He looks quite slow at the moment, so he may have butchered here. Oh, and he's in the fence too. Well, if he wasn't butchered there, he's definitely, unfortunately, butchered it now. So let's just see if we actually get a first sector register here coming up into the staircase section. The answer's no. So you were spot on there, Rhodey. He has unfortunately been a little bit too aggressive through the first chicane and has picked up a track violation. So that renders his lap unfortunately invalid, and he will lose a spot. So as we were talking about before, if you're the first man out in the shootout, as it was Cam Rutledge, you've got everything to gain by going out first. If you put in a half-decent lap, if people behind you butcher it, you move up the order, and that's what's happened in this case.
Absolutely, and psychologically, it's quite a frustrating thing. Like you have it in the middle of the lap, you've got time to sort of suss it out. It's one of the things. Middle lap, especially if you're up, you just try and maintain your up. You don't necessarily go for quicker pace, and we've seen that Steve pulling in. You don't necessarily try and maintain. You don't try and improve the pace. You're just happy to maintain the pace if you're quicker through the first sector. The first sector is where you normally gun it because you get yourself in the green and you get yourself in a good headspace and you start the lap well. The last sector is also where you gun it. So if your track cut towards the back end of the lap, that's frustrating. The middle sector is normally a good place for it to happen psychologically. But yeah, for it to happen so early and for you to be so psyched up and immediately have your balloon popped like that, it just takes all the wind out of the sails. So that's a shame for Steve. But look, at worst he's going to be 10th, and now we turn to Lockie Lock.
We do indeed turn to Lockie Lock as he's coming through 11 and 12 right now. So he's had a pretty good season. He's the Super 2 champion for 2022 in ASR. He's been under the CRE umbrella for most of the Supercars campaign, still under that umbrella for Enduro Cup. And here he goes to the line to start his flying lap here, the top 10 shootout. So came into shootout 8. Oh, he's going to get a track cut for sure too. I would not be surprised if he's been pinged there as well. Did he pull it up early enough? That's the question I want to know. Steve Warwick had a similar line, but has Locke been able to wipe off some speed and keep himself ticking along here? Let's get a read on it. And the answer is, it is. He managed to keep the clock ticking, so he's done a fairly good job there to be able to not trigger a track violation, but it has cost him 0.6 of a second against Rutledge's time.
Yeah, he will have quite literally thrown out the anchor at turn 1. He probably knew as he turned in for turn 1 that he was going to have the wrong line and that he had to lose speed to not trigger as a cut. So the line, probably, yes, that's a cut, but by the pace he went through there, he got away with it. Or even if he wasn't a cut, he was probably pretty marginal based on what we've seen so far for lines through there. But crucially, he's got a time lap. He's coming now up towards the second sector split.
He didn't get a second sector split. I
No.
don't believe he got a second sector split at all. So I think he maybe got a bit too out of control somewhere, or he's taken a turn a bit too aggressively. Live timing is unfortunately having a bit of a hissy fit tonight with live races, which is periodic. It does happen every now and again. But he's now into the 2021. Clock's still counting. Actually, he did get a time. I mustn't have seen it flash up. So that's a bit strange because it normally comes up on the exit of turn 9 is where the trigger point is. So he has registered a time. I do apologise. It is good enough for the second quickest time at the moment, but that's another spot for Rutledge.
Yeah, so as we mentioned, just getting in and getting a lap done. Look, he's got a time lapse, so he's in a similar boat now where, you know, if somebody picks up a track cut, you know, Steve Roy, unfortunately, the first example for that, look, the worst lock he's going to do is 9th, but I'm pretty sure he was planning on out-qualifying Cam. So, you know, at least as things sit, I think in terms of actual official cars with teams with CRE in the name, Cam is actually the fastest CRE driver at the moment.
Yeah,
which is not what I think he planned coming into the shootout, because the 5 minutes car is 2 CRE drivers, but they're not running under CRE for the Enduro Cup. So Cam is actually the fastest CRE driver in qualifying, as it turns out. But now we switch to a CRE driver not in a CRE car in Turmo.
And one that has switched allegiances from the supercars to the Enduro Cup. They've gone from the Mustang to the Commodore, which is one of the, I guess, the little interesting nuances of all things Enduro Cup. It's its own separate series, so you can decide to run whatever car you like out of the 2 manufacturers. That's much cleaner Turmo through turn number 1. Great curb shot there at turn 3 as he rockets past, heading up towards turn 4. So he's very committed, but he was very clean through the opening centre chicane. Now up through 4 and into 5, and a little pinch of a break there, but he's hitting all the apexes at the moment, hitting all the right lines, and he's 4.5 tenths of a second to the good right now against Rutledge.
There we go. That's sort of more what I was expecting. No, that was a very, very clinical run through the first chicane. You know, there was commitment, there was pace to it, but also it didn't have the, I suppose, the yeet factor where you look where the car's half out of control, but you're finding pace as a result. It was very clean lap.
Got the fence!
Run wide of the chicane. He's running on to the apex at turn 8 and made the fence. He might have some damage to the front of the car. It does. He is having trouble turning it, but he might just be a lock-up rather than
lost
tire
time.
Damage, but he has lost time doing that.
That cost him some time because he had a really good run. I actually think he probably lost a lot more than what we anticipate because he was said 4.5 tenths to the good on Rutledge. He was only 2.5 tenths to the good at the second sector split, but I reckon he was a lot further up the order than a lot of people thought. And then the little running wide at turn 9 probably cost him about 4 tenths. So I reckon he's probably lost a lot more overall. He straightens the run up to the line here. He does go to the top. He ends up 4 tenths of a second quicker than Cam. Unfortunately for him, that probably could have been into the mid-20s. I think he was probably looking at about a 20.5 there, and at least another 4 tenths have gone begging after what happened at turn 8.
Absolutely. I mean, it's still a good run, and we mentioned getting those time runs in, but you know, I reckon Tomo was probably planning for something more like a 25 rather than a 29. So look, he gets to the top of the tree, but and to be fair, I'm not sure how much he was going to buy into the advantage of the guys ahead of him. But yeah, we are now jumping on board with Pete Savage in the C7 Motorsport entry.
The returning Pete Savage from Western Australia. What has he got up his sleeve? Remember what happened at Phillip Island in 2021, Rhodey? Where the bar just got continually dropped and our jaws were on the floor about just how good his qualifying was on that particular day. And I think everybody else, and considering he had a new wheelbase at that particular juncture as well, everyone was like, what the hell has just happened? But he's been out of the game for 12 months, so he's actually got a pretty steep trajectory to get back up to speed here. So this will be an interesting benchmark to see what he can produce in the shootout. Down to turn 4 we go. Hitting all the apexes nicely at the moment. Clean through the centre chicane. Clean through turn 4. Using all the road. Clips the apex again there on the inside curb. Just not too much. Just enough to keep it going. He's right with Turmo at the moment. Just 63 thousandths of a second. The difference right now. Or 63 10 thousandths of a second, I should say.
Yeah, not much in it at all. Very similar runs through the first sector. He looked maybe a little more apprehensive through the chicane, but also picked up a little bit more past that. Good run through turn 8.
He's committed.
Brush the fence, but that's pretty normal for most of the runs we've seen through there. He's also braking right to the outside of the wall, which gives him a much better turn in for the hairpin.
Yeah, look at that. Beautiful turn in there as well. Car just squirms a little bit as he applies the accelerator, getting out of there. Big slide coming through turn 10 as well. Gathers it up nicely, gets it right up to the fence, gives it a brush. He's gaining time here as well, though. He's gained 0.3 of a second just alone in Sector 2. So very, very nice job through the fastest part of the track. How does he go through the final corner? Now, I did notice as well, Roddy, that he lit the tyres up coming onto the main straight, and he goes into when he lost a lot of time in with that, maybe that little slide in the last sector there as well. So only fractionally up on the time set by Termo.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe just getting in the momentum. Maybe the second sector. Maybe just again that influence trying to push a little bit harder, and again just a lot of low speed, a lot of stop it, turn it, accelerate corners. You can't really flow the speed as nicely, and yeah, I don't know. Maybe the way the car's set up, or just the driving style is lean to a little bit more wheel spin, and that's slowing the car off the corners. He's still got to the top, but probably still maybe a tenth or two in that lap time.
Yeah, I think so. I think another tenth or two at least he would have been targeting there, especially considering he was 0.3 of a second up at second sector split and he lost a lot.
Yeah, so, but now though we switch across to Lockie Burke, the first of the AAR Mustangs.
Here he goes into turn number 14 to start his lap. So now importantly, he has started the lap pretty much out of turn number 11. So a lot of drivers will spend as much time as possible trying to get the car prepared and ready to go, and some of them will like to start the lap early. Berkey's gone probably at about the point where I would probably want to commit to it out of turn 11, because that's probably the second last of the traction zones here. Oh, he's gone wide! He's gone wide, committed too much at turn number 4. That will cost him a lot of time. And it's cost him 3.5 tenths, in fact, against Pete Savage. But it probably would have cost him, I'd say, probably at least another 2.5 to 3 tenths, Rhodey, because he was looking quite handsome through that first sector up until that point.
Yeah, based on the sort of times he used to get in here and the times he did in practice, yeah, he's probably realistically, compared to his own delta, cost himself, probably closer to 4 or 5 tenths, like you mentioned. Very good run through turn 8, and again, right to the wall at turn 9, getting it turned in quite nicely. A little bit of throttle mid-corner, which seemed to be a bit misplaced because it rotated the car a little earlier than I think he wanted. He sort of had to steer out of the turn and get back into it again. Run right to the wall again through here, and he was green. I didn't catch how much by, but he did pick up the time through the second sector, and he's probably going to get a slightly cleaner run than Pete, I imagine, through the last sector here. 0.06
of a second, he was quicker in sector 2, so he's got a purple second sector at the moment. A little bit of grass kicked up on the exit there of the last turn. Does he go to the top? He does, so he found some time, so he actually managed to wrestle back a good chunk of the time that he lost, but I reckon he would have been on for a low 20 there, Rhodey. That's probably where my time, probably around the 20.2. I think that's probably what he would have been targeting had he have been able to make that stick and not made the mistake at turn number 4.
Yeah, he's gained the best part of half a second over those last 2 sectors on Pete's time. So given that he maybe shouldn't have lost that to begin with, yeah, I reckon he'd probably be looking at a low 20, all things tied up well.
All right, 6 runners down, 4 runners to go. Noah Turra, Flinders Autosport, number 26 ZB Commodore, next man up. As you said, I think I'm hearing rumblings on the grapevine. He is looking at a potential run in supercars next year. He's done a few wildcards. He's a little bit ragged through turn numbers 1, 2 and 3, but sometimes that's just the way he likes to drive, and it shows when he puts the lap time down. Leaves a little bit on the table there at turn number 4, but hitting again all the apex markers. Very, very nice. A helicopter shot. 7 tenths, nearly 8 tenths of a second to the good. Where did that come from? That's absolutely staggering at this part of the game.
I will say, to be fair, that we based on Lockie Burke's first sector, which was down on Pete's.
Yes, a fair point.
So that's probably realistically more like 2 tenths up on Berkey's pace through the first sector. But still, that's very good.
Oh, right up to the fence. Not a millimetre to spare as well. He navigated that turn absolutely to perfection. How's the car pull up? Pulls up nice. He's still 7 tenths of a second to the good. Just lost a touch to Lockie Burke in the mid-sector, but he is flying at the moment. We might see a 19, the first 19 of the top 10 shootout. I know we saw a number of 18s into the qualifying session. Little bit of a lock brake just going into the last turn will hurt his time just a little bit. But this is looking good for a 19. It's a 19.7. He actually found another 0.2 of a second in the last sector. So the first 19 of the top 10 shootout goes to Noah Tara. Very, very nice job and very, very committed and very, very quick.
Yeah, that's the biggest gap we've seen so far between times in the shootout. And the question then remains, I've got to go back and have a look at the qualifying times to see how he got in here. I have a feeling that will be an improvement. If not, he's probably set pretty close to what he set.
It'll be pretty close.
Session. But it's in a case of what he does relative to the cars in front of him.
That's exactly right. So with him now on his way back to the sheds, attention now turns to another one of the substitutes for this weekend in Kurt Stenberg, taking over from Tim Redmond in the 430 Beyond Electrical sponsored Kiwi Sim Sports Beyond Borders Commodore. So he's no stranger to qualifying around here. He's done it plenty of times before, so we're expecting good things. I think, Rhodey, there's, I guess, a high expectation that he's in the top 3, if not on the front row. But front row is going to be a bit of a challenge. Brendan Ross will be throwing down the gauntlet. Uses as much of the road as he possibly can to maximise the traction and the turn and the drive on exit of 14 to get maximum straightaway speed. So already, you know, qualifying like the way we expect. Oh, car got very out of shape. Very out of control through the centre chicane and gathered it up on the other side. Locks the brake though. He's going to go down. He's hitting the fence. Is he? No.
He's just that wasn't
saves
quick,
it.
but he's still got a time lap under him. He's going to have some very, very warm rear tyres, both with a wobble through the centre chicane and that lockup. He's more than a second off of Noah Tara at this point. He can buy back into that, but I'm not sure he's going to get all the way back in the next 2 sectors.
No, I don't think he will either. There's 1.3 seconds down. He'll get a little bit of that back. So I dare say he's going to be trying to be targeting between Peter Savage and Lockie Burke on the timing screens at the moment, but super committed, nothing to lose. And same like Noah Tara, right up to the fence. Just a cigarette paper in between there as well. Another big lockup coming down into the hairpin and sends him wide. So what does that do to the time? He's actually a 10th better off than what he was at Sector 1. So he's gained a little bit of time here, but needs another 10th or 2 to just try and jump ahead of Pete Savage and into what would be a net P3 as it stands right now with 2 runners to come.
Yeah, so it's really interesting to see how this is going to play out. He's, Adam and I have a 21 in the end.
21.1.
He's actually ended up behind
Termo. So he's dropped right off. So that's a shock. That's quite a shock. I don't think we were expecting that in the box, but the top 10 shootout giveth and the top 10 shootout taketh away.
Actually, oh, sorry, no, I was just looking through cars. Don't worry about that. But no, that was, I did, sorry about that one. I did not expect him to be that far down. I expected maybe at his pace he might maybe hold a 10th or 2 just to make sure he was safe. And that run through the first chicane was cut free, but it was definitely messy, and then that lockup really sort of sealed the deal for him. So now we're going to switch across to Brendan Ross.
So he was a late improver. He launched himself up the order in the latter stages of qualifying after being plumb last at the half distance point of the first qualifying session. Oh, he went right out to the fence on the exit of turn 3. We haven't seen that for a little while, but he was trying to maximise the amount of real estate he had and actually rub the fence. Oh, car's a little bit squeamish under brakes and at the rear there heading into turn 5, but at the moment still a 10th and a little bit to the good on Noah Tara's time.
Yeah, I saw a point there where he went to turn in and the car actually turned in a little better than I think he was planning. I think the car's set up to maybe understeer a little bit, and where it's not, it's actually throwing him off. But crucially, look, he's up by a 10th at that first sector marker, and he's looking pretty good at the moment.
Rossi's throwing the kitchen sink at this. He's had the car up on 2 wheels through 7. He gave the wall on exit 7 a little bit of a rub. And, he's a bit wide there. Helicopter shot illustrated it really good. He was about 2-3 feet away from the apex at turn 9, and he's lost time. He's gone backwards, so he's lost about 0.3 of a second here relative to Noah Tara. So the last sector is now important. Can he launch the number 5 machine up onto the provisional front row of the grid, or is he going to be consigned to being behind Tara? Little bit of an issue in the traction zone out of the hairpin, and he misses out. He misses out on the front row, so the Taras are on the front row. That's a guarantee here. The Taras are on the front row.
This is Not how I saw this playing out, but no, it's still a good run in the end for Rossi. The only thing I would say, thinking about it, being back now to the last couple of years we've ran the hard tyres at Adelaide, I know historically at some tracks the hard tyres haven't been ready to go on the first flying lap. So I don't know whether that plays into it, or maybe it's just people just pushing too hard, people conserving and having it play incorrectly either way. But yeah, at this stage, the worst that the 26 Flinders Autosport car can do is second.
That's right. Now, I believe there might be some sort of issue going on at the minute. I'm waiting to see what's going on with the last man who was meant to be out, which was meant to be Luke Rosella, but I think he's actually maybe vanished. I think he may have vanished from the server. Now, this will be a problem, I think, because I believe the qualifying sessions are actually locked. We'll have to see if we to get him back in here, but we're waiting on some. Yeah, he's actually just left the server. I'm seeing on the other side here, so we are waiting officially to see what is going on with Luke Rosella. And whether or not he's going to be able to get back in to take part in this top 10 shootout. Now, unfortunately, he can't send the man he's sharing with out. And we're just getting some word through. Rosella has had a game crash. He can't take part in this shootout. So that's coming through from the live feed in the server. So, Brent Foley is the man who is keeping tabs on us for that one at the moment. So that unfortunately means, if that is the case, Rosella's going to start last in the... Sorry, will be effectively classified as 10th if that's the way it's going to be. And this man has done enough to put him on pole. It'll be pole by default.
Yeah, which... not the way you want to score it, but at the same time, like, it wasn't just a case of by default. He had... Brendan Ross, he had Lockie Burke, he had Kurt Stenberg all lined up to take a shot at him. But yeah, by the way things have played out, the home kid, Noah Turra, is on pole for race 1 tomorrow.
Yeah, you're right. And we're getting some word through that. Yeah, that's official. The sessions were closed. So he had the game crash. That's unfortunately on him. So that is how the cookie crumbles, unfortunately. So we are done and dusted in the shootout here. Noah Turra is your pole sitter for tomorrow's first 200-kilometre race. Wow, what a twists and turns that this has taken on.
Yeah, that'll be interesting for tomorrow because, Steve Rorick starting at the back in the top 10, he's probably going to equalise himself fairly comfortably, sort of about where he falls. It's a long race, but it's not a long race at the same time. It's actually the shortest race length we have in Enduros because it's a 400k weekend, but it's 2 200k races, shorter than the 300, obviously shorter than the 500. It's not as long a race. I don't think it's going to stop Luke and Corey's pace, but it's sort of going to be, I suppose, a similar situation. It's going to be Lewis Hamilton at Spa this year, where you see a team who's comfortably at the top end of the field running their own race. All of a sudden, they're having to pass people now. So it's going to be a very interesting start to the race 1 tomorrow.
Yeah, I agree. This is going to be extremely interesting. And, we're about to get another qualifying session underway in just a few moments. We're going to take this opportunity to just digest what's happened. And we'll be back on the other side of these short infomercials with another qualifying session for the second of the races tomorrow. The 2022 ASR Supercars Championship is proudly brought to you by Cam Rutledge Electrical, a licensed electrical contractor in Nowra, New South Wales. And Beyond Electrical, specialists in electrical, domestic, commercial, industrial and maintenance work in Auckland, New Zealand. The ASR team would also like to pay thanks to those businesses that helped us over the course of the 2021 season. Matt Harvey Repair and Tune, Smith & Sons Renovations and Extensions. Design, plan, construct. Penrite, a better class of oil since 1926. Ryco Filters, the professional's choice since 1936. And Milwaukee Tool, nothing but heavy duty. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for staying with us for the final round of this year's ASR Enduro Cup, or the first half of this year's final round of the ASR Enduro Cup. We're still in a little bit of shock, I think, about what's just gone down in the last 5 minutes or so, with Noah Turra taking his first pole position. But obviously, Luke Rosella was heavily fancied to take that, but unfortunately, Roddy, sometimes that's what happens. The qualifying sessions are locked because of people that have these sorts of issues, and if they leave the server, they unfortunately can't get back in. That's the rule it's been for some time here in ASR, and it doesn't happen all that often, but when it happens, unfortunately, you've got to live with the consequences.
Yeah, and much I suppose in real life, that's the way the cookie crumbles. I mean, we saw this with guys IRL at Adelaide. That's someone you and I both know. Tony Ordino was scheduled to race there in Super 3, but just the way it played out, he's something major. I can't remember exactly what happened, but something with his engine on the Friday during practice, and he doesn't keep a spare engine. I think most people in most categories don't keep a spare engine, so he was out for the weekend just based on Friday. And it's the same sort of thing. It's a digital version of that. It's just, it's probably equivalent starter to this is the starter motor failed. So he went to leave the pit lane. We saw this granted under race settings for us in 2013, I think it was, with Van Gisbergen, that was going to win the 1000 with, I think it was Jono Webb. And then the last pit stop, he stalled the car and the starter motor gave up, and he eventually got going, but he lost, I think, nearly a lap in the process, and there went his win. Yeah,
you're not wrong. So there was definitely something interesting there with regards to how all that played out on the day. And you're right, I guess you can probably make a case for what we've just seen, sort of a bit of an akin for that. So by virtue of how everything is unfolded, and for the drivers that actually ran and the drivers that didn't get a chance to get out, by virtue of the fact that Steve Warwick actually got out and completed laps in the shooter, or completed a lap in the shooter, or attempted to complete a lap, even though it was disallowed for the track violation, he'll start 9th. And then Rosella, by virtue of not being able to leave the pit lane, he will start 10th. It'll almost be akin to, I guess, what happened with Thomas Randall in the top 10 shootout on the Saturday afternoon, where he made the shootout comfortably, and he unfortunately didn't get the car repaired out in time after its damage to be able to partake in a shootout. That sort of fits along those lines. So he was therefore classified as the 10th place starter for the race on Saturday. So that's the method we're going to follow.
Yeah, and that one bit as well. And that was a shame, because the next day, because of procedural reasons, they delayed qualifying for about 5 minutes because they had to sort out a penalty first. It's just one of the things where you can delay qualifying, but you can't delay qualifying. And anyway, I don't want to start a flame war in the next 20 minutes now.
Yeah, please don't.
Discussion about that.
Please don't.
It's the way some of that plays out. But no, at the end of the day, look, Noah was there when it mattered, and Noah's PC was there for him when it mattered, and so we've set the order for the first race tomorrow. We're now going to start setting the order for race 2.
Yeah, we will indeed. So let's see how everybody fares in this one. Now, I'm keeping an eye on on my list here as well, Roddy, just to see which drivers have switched in between sessions as well. So running through the order, running through the list in no particular order. Nathan Higginson has switched out with Kurt Stenberg. Steve Burko has switched out with Pete Savage. And Justin Cecil has switched out with Taipan. So Taipan out, Cecil in, Stenberg out, Higginson in, and Savage out, and Burko in. Those are the only 3 swaps that I can see on my list of 13 drivers right now.
It's interesting how some of those played out. Like the Burko Savage one, sorry. The Burko Savage one, I did see coming, because I talked about it before the night. They're both within about a tenth of each other on pace, so it wouldn't be a major effect. And also gives them both a chance to stake a claim, get some running in tonight. So then they racers want to race; they want to drive cars around a track. Higginson and Stenberg, I'm surprised by, but to be fair, I'm led to believe, although not necessarily by the most authoritative sources, so don't take it as hard fact, but I'm led to believe that, as per usual, Kurt has had a little bit to drink before tonight's race. He normally does.
It is Saturday night after all.
Absolutely, that too, and whether maybe just as a result of the way that shootout went for him, that he's gone to get some more of it, and is at the point where Higginson might be at least a more consistent drive for the shootout. I don't know, maybe it was entirely just planned because this is Higginson's car, that Higginson was going to run one of the qualifying shootouts and qualifying sessions and one of the shootout sessions if he gets there, because Kurt's just a guest driver in the car. Higo's entity is Higo's run at the title and all that. And then the other one being, you mentioned Justin Sesselin for Taipan. They're probably about practice for a similar pace as well. I was talking with Taipan earlier, he's spent a lot of the time at the back end of Dev Series around the Super 3 guys, which is how I kept running into him. But his pace-wise is probably a little better. And we've seen also with Justin, he's been pretty close to the pointy end in a lot of Dev Series this year. I don't think he was necessarily have a swing at the team's title, partially because he didn't have a teammate that was able to be there for the full season. But he was, pretty comfortably sort of top 5 on a top 4, top 5 on pace when people like Noah and Zach and Bailey sort of didn't blow in. But of the sort of the guys we expected, the guys that started the season, especially in Supercars, or Super 2, Justin was sort of there or thereabouts, the top 5, top 10. So probably again similar pace with those guys, and again just getting them in the car, getting laps in, getting used to, especially for the guys who only run Dev Series, getting used to the hard tyre around Adelaide, because they've run Adelaide almost every year, but it's the first time they've run it on a hard tyre.
Absolutely. We've just got catching a replay. We're looking at Nathan Higginson here. We actually just caught a replay of Brendan Ross, who was actually on an out lap here, and I think he's made a bit of a right hash of it going into turn number 11. I saw him off the road, and not an ideal start to qualifying 2 for him, because he didn't have an ideal start to quali 1. What's he done here? Yeah, he's got a little bit too high up on the curb there, and whoops, down the escape road he goes. That's all there was with that.
Yeah, so we're going to start to see times set soon, I believe.
Yeah, we're getting Nathan Higginson to the line. He'll be the first
Higginson
one.
will be the first, and then Steve
actually it's
Burko.
track. It's
Steve
track.
Burko, actually.
Yeah, it'll be Burko,
yeah,
because it was track violation for Nathan Higginson.
Yeah, so Burko sets a 120.6, which is immediately eclipsed by Luke Rosella, who's done an 18.7, which I think is pretty close to his best already. So he's just winding back into where his pace was at, and obviously there's a file under his bum after how the first year played it for him. So he's going to do his best not only to make his mark on qualifying, but he'll be in there, I don't know, praying to the PC gods or what he's going to have to do for Q2 to make sure he lasts till his time in the shootout. I mean, I don't know, maybe the gamble is if his PC is a bit iffy, maybe he intentionally qualifies. He can't do it at this point, he's set at 18.7. But I don't know, if the PC is going to be a bit iffy, if he feels it might be a bit iffy, maybe the gamble is you actually intentionally qualify towards the back, so you get your shootout running early, so you guarantee you get a timed run. But he's already put himself a second and nearly 2 seconds clear of next best time at the moment, so I don't think that's going to happen. But it's just a thought that's come to me that might work for strategy.
Yeah, possible. I'm not 100% sure on what people's strategy calls are sometimes. This man's got a bit of a point to prove as well, Mark Davey, after missing out on the top 10 shootout by 0.3 of a second. He'll have a bit of a point to prove. And actually his time, let's have a look at this. Let's play some interesting games here, Roddy. We'll have a look not only at the drivers and what their qualifying laps were in qualifying 1, but we'll also see who goes better and who goes worse, and on top of that we'll also see how the 3 different teammates that are in the session fare relative to their counterparts that took part in qualifying 1. So interesting for Mark Davey, he's actually just gone a tenth faster on his best lap compared to what he did in qualifying 1. So he's already off to a good start. Yeah,
and as I said, especially if, and to be fair, the way he said in the comments, I think he's really got the drive to try and get into the top 10 tonight. It's his first time qualifying a supercar. It's his first time really. Second time driving a supercar chassis, because he did, I believe, qualify the car. I can't actually remember if he raced at Dev Series at Bathurst or not. Either way, it's his first time he's actually sort of visibly, I suppose, in the qualifying session. He was sort of buried in the pack there for Super 2 if he was there. But he is, he's getting some prime time here because there's less cars and everyone gets a bit of airtime in Enduro Cup because it's easier with less cars. But also, as I mentioned, there's the pressure from Bailey. Also, just, again, that internal pressure. Like, Six maybe hasn't had the pace, but I know, Six does some racing in other platforms and other leagues, and, he likes to be, sorry.
It's competitive
is what I was saying. Yes. Yeah, that's what I was going for. For some reason, I couldn't get half that out because a cough was coming. But yeah, he's competitive. So he might not have the pace, but he wants to have that pace. And he reckons he was there for a top 10 showing in Q1 if he could get a clean lap together, and he's lucked out pretty much at the moment that he's got a lot of clean track around him. He's currently sitting in 70, well, didn't improve on that last lap. And Cam Rutley just jumped ahead of him by 10th, and realistically Cam's probably his benchmark to try and beat, because assuming similar pace, and this is including the driver swaps, Cam's probably going to be the gateway to the top 10 again. So 6 needs to get ahead of Cam, and at this point he's got a 10th and a bit to do that.
He does. There's some time on the board. He's got plenty of time. That's the important thing here. So keeping an eye on Noah Tara. So he's got a 19.4 under his belt at the moment. He actually qualified with an 18.9 in qualifying 1 to make the shootout. So he's got another 0.5 of a second to find at the moment. How are the substitutes tracking? Well, not substitutes, rather, the drivers that have swapped out. So the first of those we'll look at is Justin Cecil. He currently occupies the 10th place position. And his best lap time, well, our live timing is just continuing to be a bit of an issue here for us this weekend for some weird reason. As we said, the live races sometimes just has these little hissy fits every now and again. We have to refresh it just to get an idea of what's happening. Justin Cecil coming to the line now. Improves on his PB, so a 122.596 for him. Taipan was a 21.586 incidentally, so there's a little bit of time still to be gained for Justin Cecil to try and make him relatively competitive against his counterpart. Steve Burko's the next one I want to take a look at. So at the moment for Steve, we're just waiting to see, again, our live timing being a bit of a disaster for us at the moment. And how's he tracking at the moment?
He's done a 20.681. That's his current best lap. It is currently on a PB, so that will come down. But the 20.68 compares for Pete's best to a 19.8. So again, about not quite a bit less than saying, about 8/10 in this one. But he is improving here. We probably take another 10th or 2 off that. And crucially, in practice, they were only about a 10th separated. So he was actually the quicker one in practice. But it was one of the situations where everything just locks in and you get a good lap, and then you kind of just can't repeat it again. Yes. And he has actually lost a bit of time there. Yeah. So he could go quicker than Pete, but I don't know how much practice they even did in the practice session tonight in a qualifying tune versus maybe even a half race tune. And crucially, Steve just needs to line those guards, line those cards up again. And
the other one of those is Nathan Higginson. So he has got a bit. He's probably got the steepest mountain to climb, I think, relative to his co-driver here. At the moment, he's on a 20 that you can see there on your live timing, and his co-driver for this weekend, Kurt Stenberg, was an 18.6. So I think Higginson's the one that you and I are both expecting. Roddy has got the tallest mountain to climb. Going to be striving to try and get as close as he can to that mark, but we won't be surprised if he falls, substantially short.
Yeah, I think the problem for Higo at least is, there's been times that he's been able to sort of get out of that pressure and get out of his own head. But I think especially, he's got Kurt Stenberg and, everyone that's been around for more than a minute knows the pace of someone like Kurt as his co-driver, and Higginson can run his own race, but at the same time there's that pressure to, not be the slowest co-driver, or not be the slowest driver in the car.
Oh, and there's traffic here as well. Sorry, Roddy, there's traffic here as well. And actually it was Justin Cecil, and he was on a fast lap, I think, as well. And now Locks managed to get ahead of Higo, who ran wide at the hairpin. Yes.
Higo needs to back off a bit and give himself a bit of clearance to the guys. And there's a bit of gap behind him to do that. I said I think he's just going to go past Justin here, but Lockie, but he's still going to be stuck behind Justin. But yeah, that's the thing. Every time I cut Higo outside of this run, which I think he's just trying to set himself up for a run out of the final corner, actually he's been able to do that because Lockie's gone back to the pits and returned to the track again. Every time I've caught him, he's been out of control somewhere, which we're not unfamiliar to seeing for Higginson in a supercar, whether it's Dev Series or supercars. But I think the biggest thing for him tonight, it doesn't matter for him if he's not as quick as Kurt, because Kurt is a different ballpark to Higo. Higo just needs to get out of his own head and just get into a happy space and just go and do some laps. That'll be where I think you'll get the best pace from. At the moment, he'll be sitting in with Kurt and I think with a couple of those guys. And I know different drivers react in different ways to different settings and scenarios. But I think I know plenty of times with social series, gotten very serious with it and decided he wants to go and, run for a pole or something, and he'll go and disappear for 30 minutes and put himself on deafen to try and focus.
That's right.
I think that's what he needs to do, and if he hasn't deafened himself already in that session, I think that's the best thing for him to do.
He hasn't.
Because a lot of the guys, he hasn't.
I can see right now, he's down there at the moment, and it's open slather session as well, and the people that are in that chat at the moment, I would not be surprised if Higo is having a very difficult time concentrating right now.
Yeah.
But we will see. We will see. So Rosella's gone back to the sheds. He's on an 18.6, and his lap to get into the shootout was an 18.4. So that's not too bad for him. And let's have a look down the rest of the order. Let's just see how everybody's tracking at the moment. Noah Tara's an 18.9. He's actually matched. He's matched, or pretty close to matched, his best time. Not by much. He's off by a touch, but he's the closest of all of them so far. Lockie Burke's done a 19.3. And he did a 19 flat in quali 1. Termo 19.9, and he did a 19.8, so he's pretty close. And then we take a look at the likes of Steve Burko, who I think is the next man down the order. He has got a 20.5 on the boards relative to Pete Savage at 19.8. Cam Rutledge did a 20.5. He's on a 20.5 in this session. He did a 20.8 in qualifying 1, so he's actually found 0.3 of a second, so that's very important for Cam. You were talking about him being the gateway to the top 10. Right now he's 8th. Steve Warwick 20.6 in this session, and he did a 20.4 in the previous qualifying. And then the last man I meant, Higginson 20.9 against Stenberg's 18.6. And then the balance, you've got Mark Davey 21.0 versus his 21.1. And Justin Cecil with his 22.5 against Taipan's 21.5. The only one we're yet to see a time out of at the moment, Rhodey, is Matt Cecil.
Which he's just
gone and set one right now as we speak. It's a 23.6, and he actually did a 21.7 in the first qualifying session, but still got some time to go. So the important ones are there's a few drivers in there that are pretty close to where they were, and one substantial, or two improvements. Mark Sticks-Davey up by a 10th, Cam Rutledge up by 0.3 on what he said earlier in the night. So a few drivers that'll be pretty pleased with their efforts right about now.
Yeah, actually, I'm just looking at the top of the tree for reference. Yeah, Rosella's still probably nearly 0.2 off of his best. Same with Rossi's, I think.
Actually, Rossi's
0.2 off, but he has improved, but he's also still 2.10. Yeah, he's almost a tenth and a half off of his best.
Yeah, Rossi's just launched himself up the order, actually. I was just keeping an eye out for that one. He's done an 18.8. In amongst me actually going through the list, I did realise he was down the order and then vaulted up as I was checking everybody off. He did an 18.6 in quali 1, so he's about 0.2 of a second away from where he was earlier in the night. So staying with Matt Cecil for the minute, these guys have just been plugging away, the Dev Series drivers that have paired up, not only for Enduro Cup, but they were also a team in the development series at Super 2 this year. They had a pretty good run of things. Cecil finds 0.2 of a second, 21.5, and that's quicker by 0.2 of a second. Oh, he's giving the wall rubber there. And given a substantial wallop. Quicker by 0.2 of a second versus his quali 1 effort. So he's another one to find some improvement.
Yeah, he's had a pretty good run. And I know that there's been a bit of frustration for him and Kempe. I'm not sure what the plans was coming into it. I know they're getting to the point where they were just either in traffic or what it was. They were both getting a little bit frustrated with just running the cars at night. But yeah, no, Matt's he's managed to fight through that when I was getting into. He sort of fought through that, and he's getting some good pace of the car now. He's maybe not quite at risk of troubling the top 10, but he's still getting some good laps in, and crucially, he's going to start ahead of guys that weren't able to make it tonight.
Oh, and there's a few drivers that are just starting to get a little bit silly at the moment. Cam Rutledge has had one hell of a tank slapper coming through the opening chicane. Mark Davey just went down the escape road at 4 on an outlap. So thankfully no damage done there. But there's a few drivers that are just, now that they feel that they're quite firmly entrenched, are going to have an interesting time. Have a look at this, Rhodey. Let's have a look at 5th on back to 8th. Okay, so you got Steve Warwick who's currently sitting in there in the 5th place position at the moment on a 120.406. You've got Rutledge on a 20.427, Lockie Lock 428, and then you've got Steve Burko on a 506. So that little cluster between 5th and 8th is going to be quite interesting at the moment. And then Higginson on a 20.9 and Mark Davey 21 flat. We have lost somebody from this session.
No, and I was just about to lead into that. I've just got a PM from Brendan Foley, who's would be racing tonight, but unfortunately Scudder can't make it this weekend, so he's running.
Actually, Steve.
Proceedings.
No.
But no. Lockie Burke has pulled out. Lockie Burke has received the call from work that he's needed at work.
Oh wow!
So his time will remain. I forgot what time he did set, but he was somewhere within the top 10. The crucial thing, if he is in the top 10 on the timing, which we're going to have to, it actually means that we're looking for the top potentially 9 in this session. I have to go find his time to compare to everyone else. But if he qualifies in the 10th, his car will start 10th.
Yeah, well, that's what I believe he was already in the top 10 as well, if that serves me correctly. We're going to have to check this on the other side of actually, I can check this out while we're looking at it right now. So we were busy looking at the timing to see who was doing what. We'll go back and pull up the current results because it will tell us that there's a session in progress, and we will get that information. So that's a bit of an unknown factor in this one at the moment. Where is Burke? His time was a 19.365. So at the moment, that would be the 5th quickest time. So that means that the battle between Higginson and Mark Davey in the closing stages of this qualifying session is going to be important again. Higginson on 20.9, Davey on a 21 flat. The last step inside the top 10 is up for grabs here. Surely Sticks can't be denied for a second time. He goes into the he goes into the 10. So that 9th for Mark Davey on the board right now is the last spot inside the top 10 right now. Displaces Higginson. What does that do? He's now rolling out the gate through the pit lane now. So he's only going to get one last crack at this. He's going to get one shot.
This is going to be a very interesting next 2 minutes for Higginson and everyone supporting the 430 because that car can make the 10. And Higginson probably has the pace to make the 10. He just needs to get into the zone to find that pace. And he hasn't been able to so far. He could very easily, and that's the other thing is, I'm not sure how many other drivers, Scrooge, I'm not sure if either of those drivers are necessarily aware. Higginson might be, I don't think Sticks is at all, that 10th in the session does not mean 10th for the shootout.
No.
9th in the session is 10th for the shootout, based on where the current timing sits. And honestly, for those two, I don't think either of them are going to risk going faster than what Berkey had set. So, yeah, whichever one of them, or whoever comes 9th at the moment is going to be the last car in the top 10. Higo might know that because, again, he's got other people in the chat that can let him know. Again, but I don't know whether
I think Brent Foley's just gone in there. I can see he's in that chat at the moment. He's just gone in to tell him that that's what the case happens to be. So for Mark Davey,
Sticks needs to know as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So correct. So Mark Davey's actually got to get a wriggle on here. He can't rest on his laurels. He's got to be on point right now. He just did a cool down lap and he's going again now. So he's on his last one. So too is Cam Rutledge just behind him. Nathan Higginson, he's coming to the line, looking to start 1-2, and then you've got Brendan Ross. I think he's about to start another one as well. He's on screen now, followed by Noah Turra. Again, we've lost the art of live timing, so we can't really get a read on where everybody is on the track. I can tell you though that Turmo is in the sheds. He's essentially parked up, and he will be safe from this point of time. So Turra starts another lap. Rosella's about to finish one, and will probably be lucky to get another one in. Keeping an eye on him at the moment. He's coming down to the last spot here, and he'll get one more lap, but not like he needs it at the moment. Who's behind him on the roadie? That's the important piece of the puzzle I need to know right now.
Yeah, no, I was just looking. I've just noticed actually Sticks has also pulled out of his lap, so it's all down to Higginson now to beat Sticks, and the gap is not comfortable.
Drama.
So, he rubbed the wall out of the top of the staircase section on the run down the back straight, and just pulled over for some reason. I'm gonna guess he just wasn't improving in his sectors. But yeah, it's up to Higginson now. This is his last lap to improve. He's
in the game. He's not green, but he doesn't need a lot. He doesn't need a lot. That's the important thing. He needs a good sector. He needs a good last sector. This is super, super late drama and very, very tight. It's a yellow flag out of the final corner. Somebody probably went a bit wide. Higginson's gone off wide as well at the apex. That might be costly here. Checkered flag is out. Ross behind him doesn't really care about this result. He's out.
No.
Higginson does not make the shootout. He will start 11th tomorrow that car will start 11th in the second race tomorrow because of what has just happened. So that's heartbreak for Higginson. Ross actually ends up P3 after all that one was said and done, and they cycle through heading back to the lane. So Brendan Ross has just gone through ahead there as well. So that is a very intriguing finish. Rosella's coming across the line. Sets exactly the same time that he just did there, actually 18.232, and goes to the top of the sheets quite comprehensively there. So your top 10 in all of this, actually let's look at how it pans out. So you've got Rosella, Noah Turrup, Brendan Ross, and then Termo. And then the next man will be Lockie Burke, Steve Burko in 6th essentially, then Steve Warwick, Cam Rutledge, Lockie Lock, and Mark Davey will contest his first top 10 shootout. So that unfortunately is a little bit of late drama there. What I probably would have preferred Berkey to do is just leave the car in the server. We would have known for sure where he was and just park it up in the garage. So importantly for Berkey, the interesting piece of this equation is I'm not sure whether or not Hans Brunswick was actually back in time to jump in and contest the shootout.
It's one of the things where I suppose, like Hans is present, I'm not sure. I think the ruling is that if you qualify the car, you run the car in the shootout.
Correct.
But it's one of those things where it's maybe a thing where Berkey was pretty confident coming into this that he wouldn't be called into work, and then work had clearly other ideas. And Berkey is of the age where he's considered grunt labour by any job he has, and expected to be at every beck and call. But yeah, it's possibly a thing where he thought he was going to be good. Berkey probably had better pace. It just made sense to have Berkey qualify and then clearly work at other ideas. And now that car's going to start at best 10th for tomorrow's second race. It's not a bad position, but again, they're trying to fight Rossi and Lewis, and they qualified. Granted, the shootout's still to go, but they qualified a lot further forward.
They did. They qualified much further forward. So again, we have a very short interlude here while we just get ready to set a few things for the top 10 shootout. But wow, we've got a debutant into the top 10 shootout, and that's great. That's great news. I'm really wrapped for Sticks. That's fantastic to see.
Absolutely, yeah. So he's been working for it, and like part of it was, in theory he had it. It was easier for him because, there was a car missing, but the car missing was ahead of him on pace. Was probably never going to be behind him on pace. The real question mark, and I wouldn't be surprised if tables are being flipped down at Kiwi Sim Sports Beyond Borders. Look, I know, or I can say fairly confidently, I think you're of the same opinion. Crucially, Higo to himself knows as well. Higo had the pace to be in the top 10. Like he's raced against people like Sticks, limited runs, but he's raced against people like Sticks, against some of the other cars that he got out qualified by, and he just couldn't string it together. And maybe it's a hard time, maybe it's lack of practice. Again, maybe it's just a psychological impact. But look, at the same time, he's going to actually be at worst. At worst. Sorry, I forgot he's actually making the show. So he's going to start 11th. It's not necessarily a bad spot though, and it depends on who starts the car tomorrow in that first stint as to how well that car's going to do. But yeah, that's going to sting. It
will sting. What do you for Higginson? I think for his co-driver that's shared the cockpit with him for the first two rounds in Tim Redmond. What do you think about what Redmond's got to do here? What will he be thinking right now? More importantly,
I mean, it's one of those things. Maybe the plan was probably going to be maybe that Tim and Higo share qualifying anyway if Tim was going to make it. So I don't think Higo it would have necessarily changed the format coming into it. But yeah, what that's going to mean then is I have a thought, and my thoughts ran away from me. But yeah, I don't think it would have necessarily changed Higo's approach. The only thing that might have necessarily changed is, again, just because of the situation he's in with his co-driver. I know if Tim and Higo are present, they would be tucked away in the Kiwi Sim Sports channel with. To be fair, actually, there's not too many other Kiwis here tonight. Actually, to be fair,
they're probably all in the live chat. Actually, I don't think I've seen any of them
might
pop up in the
they
live
might be
chat.
the only Kiwi team actually here for qualifying. So I'm going to guess maybe work parties or something for everyone else. But I think they're the only Kiwi team we've actually seen here tonight. But they still probably would have been tucked away somewhere that, you know, Tim could get Higo down and focus him and narrow down on what he needs to focus on. And I'm not dissing different chat types, and different people get to speed in different ways. Like I personally, for a lot of my racing, enjoy having people to chat to, because especially when I'm doing like long distance, like, you know, solo Bathurst 1000s, it helps to have someone to keep me awake. But yeah, I you know, it's the point of all that is, like, Tim would be a little unhappy, but it's also just the way it played out, that Tim wasn't available and then now is available. But I don't know. I don't know how that looks for tomorrow, because you don't want to switch Higo, because Higo's the one that can make it. But and switching from a pace point, Kurt for Tim is, I'll say it's only very minor, but it is a very minor downgrade on pace. Like, Tim was at the front this year in supercars, but Tim didn't get a win this year.
No.
Kurt did. That's the hard facts of the matter. So if you're looking for the quickest driver to partner with Higo tomorrow, Kurt's the quicker driver. Even if he's already a degree of plastered come the start of race one tomorrow, he's probably still going to be a little bit quicker. And there's also just the courtesy of, you know, Kurt stepped up to race with him versus Kurt stepped up to race with him when Tim couldn't, and then, you know, Kurt was still available when Tim was. Higo's throws caught in the middle. He's trying to be a nice guy with things. I think so. Where Tim's stance is, generally, he's probably a little bit annoyed that the car's not in the top 10, because I think it's the first time the car's been outside a top 10, or outside the equivalent of a top 10 all Enduro Cup.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're probably right there. Well, shootout's underway. 9 cars in the shootout. So, as we said, the one car that made it into the shootout that is not taking part is Lachlan Burke, and that car is going to start 10th in this in the second race tomorrow afternoon. And we'll see Mark Davey up first, who was officially classified as 10th in the shootout in the qualifying session that just went underway and concluded. So, what's Sticks got in reserve here? Has he got something special up his sleeve? Like, he's got nothing to lose. He knows that Burke is going to start 10th. So, again, he's got nothing to... He doesn't have to worry if he gets a track cut, he's going to start 9th, because it's the same situation as we had with Steve Warwick and Luke Rosella in the previous top 10 shootout, where one got out, at least attempted a lap, and the other one did not.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how much more he has in reserve, because he did have to push. He made an improvement coming in from qualifying 1 to qualifying 2. I think we're going to see probably an 8-10 lap. I think he's more importantly going to want to try and get time on the board here.
Yeah, I agree with you, Brady. I think he's more importantly just looking to put something on the table here. He's very neat and tidy through Sector 1 so far, hitting all the markers, leaving plenty on the table. Actually, I just noticed he left quite a lot of margin on the table on the outside at 4. He's done the same at 5. He's using as much of the road on the approach to 6 as he wants, but he's not giving 10 tenths. He's not taking it all the way up to the walls here. It's a very conservative lap. It's just a very nice, clean lap. I think that's just all he's focused on at the moment. We'll keep an eye on the time that he did to get in. So his time to get in was a 20.86 through turn 8. That's as close as we've seen him get to a wall there, right up to the fence. So that was very nicely done. Car pulls up straight. No lock brakes or anything, so it's not a committed lap. It's a clean lap, but there's no mistakes in it at the moment. So for Sticks, top 10 shootout, first time. You want to just at least get home, get your lap on the board, and then be proud of the fact that you didn't make it a boo-boo doing it. So through the last corner, a little bit of curb, not too much. Angles it towards the hairpin early. That's unfortunately understeered him out the other side, which he's had to gather it up. And he'll get to the line in a 21.6. So it's 8 tenths shy of what he did to get into the shootout, but he can be pretty happy with that.
Yeah, it's virtually a time up on the board. I feel like once he's got the first sector out of the way, once he's got sort of the trouble and the risk out of the factory, he probably started winding a little bit, maybe try some new lines, because again, he's just trying to set a time, but he can maybe learn from himself, maybe running a different line at turn 8 will gain a bit of pace, maybe running it wider like he did sort of was turn 9, there's some pace in that, and, just an opportunity for learning, but also, yeah, you mentioned some airtime, and, he'll get some pretty good praise from Bailey, obviously, to see the car in the shootout. I think I can't remember actually whether Bailey got the car into the shootout before this. So it might actually be, interestingly, the first time the car's in the shootout as well in general. But yeah, crucially, some good airtime for Team 38 and all the people backing Team 38.
Absolutely. Lockie Lock now, second man out in shootout. The LLM Mustang number 237. Pushing hard, so he's not leaving anything on the table here. He's going to throw everything at it as much as he can. A little bit of a slide as he applies the throttle coming out of turn 4. Car jumps sideways, put a fistful of opposite lock in, got under control, right up to the fence on the approach to turn number 6, but he missed the apex on the turning point, and then he gave the wall on the exit a bit of a rub for good measure as well. He was a couple of tenths to the good though on Styx's time through sector 1. Now down towards turn 8. Big commitment. Got to take that little confidence lift just to get the car settled in, then pick the throttle up and outside. Gives the fence a good rub for his measure going through turn number 8. And then drills it straight down the wall, parallel all the way to turn number 9.
Yeah, that was a pretty good run. Actually, didn't gain much actually over Styx through the second
He lost
sector.
time. He actually lost time. He lost a little bit, not by much. He probably lost about a half a tenth relative to how he was through sector 1. So at the moment, only tracking 2/10 of a second to the good.
Yeah, so I imagine he'll probably get a slightly better run here. I imagine there's a bit of time lost here for Styx. So you're going to get on the line now with a 21.1.
So he picked up another 3/10.
Yeah, which is still 7/10 down than we used to get in. But again, he's locked in. He's going to be at worst 8th.
Yes.
In a race start tomorrow. And like crucially for Lockie and Ben Hall, that's sort of probably about where they sort of maybe want to pop out anyway. So he's quicker than the guys he beat to get into the shootout. So he's not fallen backwards at any point.
Rutledge starting the lap early here as well in the CRE Anson Motorsport number 915 entry, heading down towards the last turn now. So for Cam, I think top 10 shootout appearances for him tonight will be a pretty happy result. He's been so good throughout his improvement throughout the course of the last couple of years that can't even crack a podium in supercars, but regular top 10 qualifying appearances. Oh, that's a bit of a hard lick of the wall on the exit of turn 3, and he's managed to pull it up for turn number 4 okay, but that's the first major mistake I think we've seen him put a foot wrong with all night long so far, and it shows on the timing board, 2/10 of a second outside the current best. I
was half expecting him to be down on pace. Not down pace. I was expecting him not to get a track sector obviously because a sector time because it was a little bit scrappy through turn 1, and he lifted off as he came through turn 2. But I think that was more because he could see that he was going to make the fence and had tried to get the nose back down and get the car turned and clear. It didn't quite work to what he was looking for. A bit wide actually here at the hairpin, maybe a bit flustered because he came in and basically apexed quite early, which you only do there if you're trying to pass someone, and even then you're just trying to hold them off to over it. Timed run, but I think maybe Cam got thrown off his pace a little bit early and hasn't been able to get back on the bike, as it were.
Yeah, I think so, and he was very sort of indecisive at turn 9 as well. Looked like he was going for a traditional apex, and it looked like he was trying to go for an angle to the curb. He's actually fallen behind Styx. Wow, that's a bit of a shock to the system.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, and maybe just start the lap where just knocked a lot of pace out of him, and he just wasn't able to comfortably bite back into that, and maybe just again sort of the pace he set to get in was about what he could do. It's interesting. Like he has been ahead of I think Lockie most of the season in supercars. He did end up, I think, I can't remember actually whether he's managing sort of top 10 in the points, but I think he did manage to sort of top 10 again. But yeah, just thrown off the lap early and wasn't able to get back on the bike, as it were. And look again, still worst result of 9th in the shootout, but probably not ideal.
No, definitely not. Well, here's a man with a point to prove, Steve Warwick in the Blackshaws RSM Commodore. He's got definitely something that he needs to a rest after the issue he had here. Oh no, he's gone wide again. He's gone wide again. Don't tell me
it's a cut. But he's going to have lost a lot of time doing that.
Yeah, I was about to say, let's just see what happens when we get the other side here. He's super committed that time around as well, and I'd be heartbroken, and not just for Steve, but I guess just for the shootout in general, if he's actually not able to complete a lap here. Did he get through? Yeah, he got through, so he's going to have a time on the board, so that's the important thing. But the sad part of that was just too late on the brakes. He was just super late on the brakes for turn number 1, and then just missed the turn-in point, and it's just all gone south from there.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Steve's going to spend a bit of time probably early tomorrow in his prep session just getting runs through turn 1, because when it's matted, he's managed to make a bit of a meal of them twice. And like Steve, if nothing else, Steve's a very, very consistent runner. He came quite well he came out quite well in the social series, and he ran quite well in Dev series. Actually, he missed a round for Gold Coast, but otherwise he was pretty metronomically there and getting good points. So he's a consistent runner if nothing else, but unfortunately, since he's gone the other way and he's consistently bowled at turn 1 in both of these shootouts, he will get a time this time, so he will start the race ahead of the second AAR Mustang and ahead of anyone else that maybe goes a bit further than he did, but a 23.7, not ideal at all.
No, definitely not what he would have been looking for. And then have a look at the turn in here, right? That actually looked a lot better, but again,
Yeah.
just a little bit too fast. That's the only thing I could see with that. It just looks like he's a little bit too quick. So, I mean, it is qualifying. I expect that in the races tomorrow, Steve will definitely be. Whoop, and he gave the bit of the fence a bit of a lick there on his way through as well. I actually expect that him and Cuz will have a much better run through the races tomorrow, because they won't need to be as committed through turn 1, 2 and 3. They'll be able to just button it off a touch and just make sure they get through.
Yeah, so now we're switching across to Steve Burko, who qualified this is from a motorsport car for this session and is now back to start his shootout lap.
He is indeed. So off we go. Steve Burko in the C7 split livery Commodore, the number 735 machine. Dane Liccardo watching on in the live chat and keeping an eye on the progress of this car. So Burko through the first couple of corners pretty cleanly. Locked inside right front tyre. That sent him wide into I was about to say into the fence, but he did get it, but just got it at the right angle that he was able to keep pointing the right direction. Cost him though, 0.5 of a second.
Yeah, I'm happy again this was time up, because that looked pretty marginal across the turn 1 curb. Yeah, just sort of carried a bit much of speed. The rear clearly went out of him. It just couldn't get the thing turned actually through the start of the staircase. He got lucky with the way he grabbed the wall, but at the same time the wall did kind of grab the rear of the car as he spun off it, and it did drag him back across the track a little bit. So he lost probably 3 of his 5 tenths just in that manoeuvre. He's run quite deep at the hairpin, but he's going to have a slightly better run off the corner. I'm not sure it's going to make up for it though. Currently 5 tenths down on Lockie Locks. He's actually going to fall behind Sticks at this pace.
He's just maintained where he is. So at the moment, he's not really gained much time. Actually gained a touch, but not really anything significant. As he now comes to the final corner, shattering on the rears as well. There was a lock up in there as well. There's a compression locked as he came into the braking zone. So not a good run for Burko. He's managed to find a little something just in the last sector though, to just nip ahead of the 38 Racing Machine and into what is currently second place in the standings. So, geez, we're seeing a lot of errors, Rody.
Yeah, it's the shootout is can be a high pressure situation, but it's I don't know. We're not necessarily throwing a whole bunch of pressure on them. Clearly, drivers probably again last race of the season, last time they're going to be seeing themselves on broadcast in a qualifying session. A lot of drivers are trying to go for glory out there. The other thing I will say, and it's been mentioned, I believe it was Pete actually mentioned it in the live chat at one point. But because we're cycling the sessions through from qualifying through to the second qualifying session to run, all the rubber's going away, and the track is very slippery. And on hard tyres, that slipperiness is amplified because there's no grip in the tyres and there's very little grip in the track. So that's maybe what's coming, and people can't lean on the car the way they're expecting to be able to. But we're now going to switch across to Turbo for 5 Minutes Motorsport.
Absolutely. So, and he was very loose coming in there. The car disagreed. It did not want to turn in for turn 1, and he missed the apex by a bit, and he's slow. I think he's been done. I think he has been done for track cut at turn 2. He was way too quick through there. Could we see another high-profile casualty? We'll get the readout in about 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and the answer is yes.
Yeah.
So another high-profile victim. It was Kurt Stenberg in qualifying 1. And sorry, not Kurt Stenberg, it was Luke Rosella in qualifying 1. It is the Termo and Will Devenish combination in qualifying and shootout number 2. Wow. So, what happens here?
Yeah, so that's going to be, I think I mean,
well, it'll be the same situation.
They're put into a jumble. I mean, technically they'll all get put into a jumble. I suppose you could maybe argue one side or the other that at least they started up in qualifying with Berkey, who didn't even turn up.
It'll be the same situation. Yeah, so Termo's going to start 9th and Burke will start 10th. So, as it sits right now. And then the other thing will be that if we get another one that happens in this case, another one that starts a lap and gets penalised by a track violation, then we've got a bit of an issue on our hands, because then it's almost like the old adage of who did it first. Is the one that gets the preferential treatment. It's like, Jerez 1997 all over again, where we had the 3 qualifying laps that were all identical, and then whoever did it first got pole, second got second, and third got third. It'd almost be the same thing again. Whoever got track cut first is the higher placed one compared to the second one. Just actually to clarify on the rubber comment as well, I mean, there is a small amount of it that does change a little bit, but the track grip has actually been reset back to high through all of the sessions to try and keep it as high up the train as we possibly can. It won't be at maximum, but there will be still a fair bit of rubber laid down on the track, so something there for the drivers to use as we hone in here on the third last runner in Brendan Ross.
Yeah, it feels like we're flying through, especially just because the lack of people on the left-hand side of the screen. But yeah, very aggressive run there.
Very aggressive.
He got to the wall actually on the run out. He has blinked the headlights. I'm not sure whether that was frustration or what. He's just spamming buttons on the wheel. But yeah,
don't tell me this is another high-profile victim.
I'm waiting to see if he's got a sector time. I'm not 100% sure, but he is pushing.
No, he didn't get it. So he knows it's up. Another victim of the turn 1, 2, 3 chicane, and it's Brendan Ross. So, wow. I was about to say, if we got a... Did I just curse that? I didn't curse him directly, but all I said was, if we get a second one, this is how it works, and we just got a second one.
You might have possibly jinxed him.
Indirect curse?
It's been a while since it's come out, but there might be even an indirect commentator's curse tied up somewhere in that, yes.
Oh dear. Okay. Well, I better run for cover after this. It's I'm going to need a helmet the size of an astronaut to be able to stay away from what I've probably just done. So Brendan Ross, he is understandably frustrated. So, wow. Lewis Wedding, if you're watching in the live chat, what do you think about that? That's extremely interesting.
Yeah, that's going to sting. So that means now, as things currently sit, I think the worst Lockie Lock can do. The worst Lockie Lock. The Lockie Lock's a net a third place at the moment, right? So
yeah,
worst can do is third.
The worst they can do is third, with 2 runners still to come. So you've got Lockie Burke, so you've got Noah Tara, who's got to complete a lap. Then you've got Luke Rosell. That'll give us 7 runners that have set laps if we get that far. Then you've got Steve Warwick and Brendan Ross, both with curb strikes. And then you've got the Lockie Burke machine, who's going to officially start 10th. And off we go with Noah Tara.
That was a much better run there through the first sector, actually. I'd say he's going to definitely be safe, I'd say, based off of that.
Yeah, much cleaner run through there as well, as we keep an eye on thing. And actually, just Brian Walsh in the commentary, the live chat as well, just saying, doesn't it go back to qualifying times? Well, that'll be something that we have to debate. I mean, we've never had this situation before, but given it's a qualifying session in effect, my understanding is it's going to be a case of who did it first. It'll just be like the Formula 1 rules. That's why I've gone that particular route. So we'll see what happens. Tara was good, nearly half a second to the good of Lockie Lock's time, which is as expected, I think, with that run through turn number 1, 2, and 3. Right up to the fence through turn number 8 and braking straight as you please for turn number 9. Second sector split coming up now. 1 second to the good. So at the moment, tracking for a 1 minute 20 something, but expecting that'll drop into the 19s looking very, very sharp, very, very precise. A little bit of a lag spike there for a moment. I got a little bit worried that something was about to happen for Noah Turra. Little locked brake going into the last corner, but it's all okay. He's tracking toward the line. It'll be a high 19, 19.6, actually it's mid-6, mid-19, sorry. So found time in all sectors, so 19.6, very respectable in a provisional front row.
Yeah, he has done what he did in qualifying, being an 18.6, but again, like a nice big safe margin, and the only other person who's really going to worry about at this point is Luke Rosella.
Yeah, that's right.
So crucially crucially for Noah, front row start at worst. So twice he's done it tonight, but also based on Luke's pace, second race could be an all Adelaide driver front row.
Yeah, so the men from the Adelaide Hills have got a front row berth in each race for tomorrow. So they'll start from pole in race 1. They'll start from a guaranteed second in race 2, depending on what the outcome is here with the other South Australian native, or they call them over there Crow Eaters for some reason. I don't know why. Must be to do with the footy club of theirs. Luke Rosella through turn 1, 2, 3. Got all parts of the chicane to perfection. Now into the braking zone for turn number 4. Gets as close to the apex as he could get there, with the car just chattering away on the rear as it came in there. Got much more purchase on the apex at turn 5. 3.5 tenths of a second to the good. This is the part where you can sort of just take a little bit of time and just pick your lines and get it right. So he's got all those marks just about perfect. The only mistake I've seen so far has been at turn 4, where he wasn't ideally on the apex as he would have liked, but it didn't trouble the timekeeper.
Yeah, the other thing was a bit of a squirm up against the wall on the run onto the back straight there. Kind of used the wall to help stand the car out. Bit of a catch to the wall there, but not a major one there. Nice run right up to almost the wall there. Probably still trying to track on the rubber line, get the grip into the car. Right now he's 6 and a bit tenths up on Noah Turra. He's definitely going to drop into the 18s based over this. His time in qualifying was an 18.2. I don't think he's quite that good, but I reckon probably about the 18.6, 18.8 that the two cars behind him used to get into qualifying is about where he's going to end up.
Yeah, he used a lot of curb there at 13 as well, and still managed to pull the car up nice and straight. Maximum use of the curb on the outside there as well. It will be a high 18. No, yes, 18.9. So he drops into the 18s just, and he will be on the pole for race number 2 tomorrow afternoon, sharing the front row of the grid with Noah Turra. So in the second race tomorrow, it's a South Australia represent. They will be on the front run of the front row of the grid, and in the first race, they'll be bookending the 10. One will be at the front, and one will be at the back.
Yeah, so that was a pretty good run for the guys in Shout. As we said already, big shame for both Steve Warwick and for Termo to pick up the track up, and obviously shame for Berkey that life got in the way there, because I reckon he would have been a pretty good run. He could have slotted in there quite nice, especially with some of the topsy-turvy we had for the rest of the field. Although the advantage, well, actually no, the advantage is played out anyway. Look, the Alps, I mean, Sticks in only the second enduro start that he's had. He jumped in at the Carmes Field Fine, but he jumped in at Bathurst with Bailey. I'm not sure who's going to start the car for either of the races yet. That's obviously going to be decided tomorrow. But that car will start 5th for tomorrow's race, for race 2 tomorrow, which is definitely higher than I think even Bailey was planning on getting the car at any point.
I think so. Now, given that car is going to be starting 5th tomorrow in race 2, I would be strongly suggesting that Bailey Hall will start that car, given it's in such a good position. With race number 1, with Sticks being down in 11th, I think it's probably a fair call. I'll start Sticks in the car for race number 1 and just see where they go, because you're further up the order, you probably want to put a good, your A driver in to start further up the grid, because you're going to be with people that are probably going to be doing the same thing.
So just then having a look at it, I'll just go back and bring it up just to have a look at how race 2 is going to play out, because you're right, that's part of the play into it for where some of the co-drivers are going to sit in the order as well. So race 2, depending on who's starting it, it's Luke Rosella or Corey McFarlane off of pole. The timing isn't quite up to date for me for whatever reason, but Noah Turra and or Greg Turra start second, and then realistically I think they're both viable options. Greg's got a bit more seat time experience, but Noah's got the pace, and with some of the guys he's playing with at the front, maybe it's better. I don't know. It's up to drivers on how they want to play that. Trying then to pick up the rest from there because of how slightly wonky this is.
It's
It's
actually going to
Lockie
be quite
Lock.
difficult. Yeah, it's going to be
Yeah,
quite
Lockie Lock
difficult.
and Ben Hall, and then I think it was Burko and
Pete Savage, and
Pete Savage,
and then
Sticks and Six and
Bailey
Bailey.
Hall.
Yeah, there's some interesting play there because some drivers that are used to seeing each other there, and some drivers that aren't. Like, I'm not used to seeing Lockie Lock and Ben Hall ahead of Pete and Steve. I'd probably Steve a little bit. Pete, not so much. So it depends on who's starting that car. Obviously, Sticks and Bailey are going to be in front of a lot of other guys. Like, interestingly, the way it's worked out actually is that Bailey's going to start near his Super 2 front running competitors in either Lockie Lock or Ben Hall. So they'll race each other fairly well, I reckon, because they can achieve similar pace. It'll just be sort of where Sticks falls into that one. It's hard, partially because the live timing isn't visually there for us right now, but also just because there's a lot of thinking to go into tomorrow, and really that's best saved for tomorrow's broadcast.
Absolutely. Well, there's still a few things that are going to be worked out, and as I said, because the live timing has been a little bit of an Achilles heel for us tonight, it's been just one of those things with that live races that it does it periodically every now and again. We're going to have to take a little bit of time to digest all the results, make sure we've got everything in order, and get the grid set appropriately for both races tomorrow. So for those of you that plan on tuning in to the broadcast, please don't forget it is 1 o'clock Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. So that is Melbourne and Sydney. We will see you then for the conclusion to not only the Adelaide 400 for the ASR Enduro Cup 2022, but the conclusion of supercars racing here in ASR for the 2022 season. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye for now.